City Council meeting. Council members are attending this meeting remotely by video conference. Tonight's meeting is available to the public on Channel 8 and through live streaming on Broomfield's website. Public participation is encouraged by calling 855-695-3744 and pressing *3 to be placed in the queue for comment. Please note, if you would like to speak on more than one item on tonight's agenda, you will need to press *3 each time to be placed back in the queue for comment. Public comment will be taken on agenda items following staff presentations. Screeners will ask callers for their first and last name, neighborhood, and the agenda item the caller would like to comment on. Please call several minutes before the agenda item and press, once again, that's *3 to ensure that you are put in the queue for comment. Public comments will also be taken during the public comment section for topics that are not on tonight's agenda. All public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Again, the number is 855-695-3744. And please don't forget to press *3 to be placed in the queue. The City Council meeting is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Anderson?
Here.
Castriata?
Here.
Broom?
Here.
Hinkle?
Here.
Jaworski?
Here.
Law Evans? Law Evans? Lim?
Here.
Lindstedt?
Here.
Schaff?
Here.
Tessier?
Here.
Okay, and Law Evans has told us that she'll be 10 minutes late, so when she shows up, we'll let the clerk know. So will everyone please rise, and a quorum is present. Will everyone please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In an effort to keep tonight's order for tonight's meeting, I'm going to ask council to please utilize the video conferencing tools to raise their hand for comment or when making a motion or a second. I will call on the first hand raised to state the motion and the second hand raised to make the second as appropriate. I ask council members to limit their comments to 5 minutes. Abby will be assisting with the timekeeping and will provide council members with a notification via video conferencing chat when 1 minute remains. Please ensure you are on mute when not speaking. If a council member needs to leave the meeting, please inform me before doing so. We will plan on a 10-minute break at approximately 8 p.m. And I do want to note and welcome Nancy Rogers, whose first meeting is tonight, as our city attorney. We will begin with council's review and approval of this evening's agenda. Council may add or remove items for the consent agenda, or council may revise the order of business for the meeting. Does any member of the council have any additional comments or questions regarding this evening's events? Councilmember Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. I propose to move items 11C and item 11D to the consent agenda for tonight's meeting.
Okay, is there any objection? I'll note Law Evans is attended. She needs to be moved to the panelist. Is there any objections to moving 11C and 11D to the consent agenda? Councilmember Groom?
Yes, I would like to leave them both on.
So I'm not exactly certain what the rule is when there's objection. Do we then leave them on?
Yeah, we leave them on.
We leave them on. Okay. We will leave 11C and 11D where they're at and act accordingly. This evening we have 2 items that are petition and communications. Before council's review of the first item, I did want to take a few moments in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. Day this coming Monday, January 18th, and on behalf of the City Council, I wanted to take a moment to recognize the significance of this day, especially during a year of extraordinary and overdue conversations around social justice. It is important that we acknowledge Dr. King and his unparalleled impact on our trajectory as a nation and as a people. Among Dr. King's greatest contributions was his ability to embark on this journey on this mountain in steps with compassion and understanding. How can we seek change in our world through nonviolent methods, and to do so in a way with compassion and understanding? Broomfield as a city, county, and community has advanced evidence, neighbors helping neighbors, and a spirit of engaged cooperation, and we look forward to our journey ahead together. We're now going to continue with this evening's agenda. I will be reading a proclamation after we meet with the coroner. I want to make that comment to make a couple comments about what's going on in the country right now. So, however, we're going to start out with a follow-up discussion to the coroner intergovernmental agreement, which was approved by council at the December 10th, 2020 council meeting. On December 16, 2020, Monica Brancusia Jordan informed council that although council had approved the agreement with her office for 2021, her office was electing not to renew the 2021 agreement after the 2020 agreement expired on January 1st, 2021. I reached out to Ms. Brancusia Jordan as mayor on December 17th, and I apologized for the timeline, as it did not provide adequate time for council to review the contract and ask questions, nor adequate time for her office to respond. Broomfield, the police department, the district attorney, Ms. Brancusia Jordan, and her office have had a successful and positive relationship for many years. Due to the challenge with the process and the end of year timeline, we invited Ms. Brancusia Jordan to join council this evening to provide an opportunity for her, council, and the public to provide any additional comments, questions, and responses. We will start with the coroners making her comments, followed by public comments, then council member comments and questions. Items on this agenda are typically 5 minutes. I'm requesting additional time under petitions and communications from council this evening to ensure a productive discussion. And I'm looking up to see if there's any objections if we remove the 5-minute time limit. I'm not seeing any. So seeing no concerns with the request for additional time, Ms. Brancusia Jordan, please introduce yourself and share your comments.
Good evening, Mayor Quinn and council members. I'm Monica Brancusia Jordan. I am the current coroner for Adams and Broomfield counties. I am here tonight to further discuss the IGA. I think that it is important to recap for the public what has transpired and why I am here. As you are aware, despite your council's unanimous decision to approve the 2021 IGA for coroner services on December 10th, I initially elected not to renew the 2021 IGA, following the council's concerns expressed at the December 10th council meeting. Toward the end of December, it became apparent that it would be unlikely for Broomfield Council to replace my services by January 1st, 2021. So following contact by numerous stakeholders urging me to reconsider, along with a lengthy conversation and an apology from Mayor Quinn, as an act of goodwill, I agreed to sign the 2021 IGA with the assurance that I would have this opportunity to address Broomfield Council in a public forum. As you are aware, the executed IGA has a 120-day termination notice available to both parties. While I have signed the IGA and have agreed to further discussions with your council, my previous assertions have not changed. If the Broomfield Council members lack confidence in the services that my office provides, then you need to find a new coroner for your community. The Adams County Coroner's Office serves 8 cities in addition to the city and county of Broomfield, along with all of the unincorporated areas, covering a geographic area of approximately 1,200 square miles. My first priority is and always will be serving the citizens of Adams County. Serving such a large population generates approximately 5,000 reported deaths per year, of which Broomfield comprises less than 400. The Adams County Coroner's Office has provided coroner services to Broomfield for 20 years, 10 of which have been under my leadership. There appears to be a significant misunderstanding by members of this council about who derives benefit from this arrangement. I am not here to earn the business of your community. I, my staff, and my office benefit in no way from this agreement. I have maintained this agreement merely as a good neighbor and to support the 17th Judicial District, which the 2 counties comprise. This agreement was never intended to be a revenue-generating arrangement. I've always been extremely fair in what I have charged Broomfield for coroner services. The revenue generated by this agreement for Adams County is insignificant. This agreement not only provides your community with a vital public service and supports Broomfield's judicial district, but it also saves your county the millions of dollars it would cost for the infrastructure and ongoing budget to support your own coroner's office. Now, obviously, I'm not the only coroner that you can contract with. There are 63 other coroners in the state of Colorado that you can try to do business with. However, if you have confidence in the services my office provides and wish to continue to utilize these services, then I think it is important for the council to understand what this arrangement will look like going forward. Mr. Elijah McLean's death is tragic in every way, and I certainly understand the questions surrounding his death. Having questions is not the issue. At the December 10th council meeting, Broomfield Council Member Devin Schaff voiced concerns that I had committed official misconduct related to the McLean death investigation. He then directed a litany of questions to me at a meeting that I was clearly not at. The majority of Broomfield Council present then followed in suit, expressing similar sentiments. Then, despite such serious concerns and having no answer to these questions, the Broomfield Council unanimously approved contracting with my office for yet another year. I find approving a new contract on the heels of expressing such serious concerns illogical. It gives the appearance that these concerns were disingenuous and nothing more than Devin Schaff and council members' public pandering, virtue signaling, and utilizing this extremely tragic death for their own political aggrandizement. Mr. McLean's death occurred nearly 17 months ago. In those 17 months, not a single one of you has contacted me to ask questions or express concerns about his case, or to merely learn the general standards of practice my office uses to investigate police-involved deaths. Instead, you chose to use this tragedy as an opportunity to grandstand. In the 10 years that I have served your community, I have never witnessed or experienced the lack of professionalism, lack of communication, and dysfunction that I have seen over the past few weeks. So if this is indicative of what it will continue to be like to serve your community, then it is important for you to know that I will terminate our agreement. Going forward, if you have questions or concerns, like any other stakeholder, I expect you to communicate them to me. You also need to understand that there are limitations surrounding what I can discuss. So I'm here tonight to address this council, and I am open to having dialogue. So how would you like to proceed?
Monica, we're going to follow our normal process on this. And so what we do is we allow public comments. So there are two comments from the public. And then I'm going to turn it over to City Council, have a discussion on how they would like to proceed. Their comments and so we're going to follow our normal process, which I'll let you know. So let me go ahead and go to, is that finished the comments you want to make right now, Monica?
Yes.
Okay. So let me go into the public. We do have two members of the public that want to speak. They each get to speak for 3 minutes. And we will start with Rick. Identify yourself, your full name and your neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor Quinn. My name is Rick Fernandez. I'm in the Broomfield Heights division here in Broomfield. And I would like to thank you and the City Council for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'm here to offer up some comments on the events related to the renewal of the IGA between the City and County of Broomfield and the Adams County Coroner's Office, and to make 3 requests of the City Council and the city staff. I would like to say that while I would have expected this agreement when it came up for renewal to really, as it provides a city service to our community, would have been renewed without any concern from the City Council. What occurred in December was disturbing, and it was concerning. It was disturbing to hear that rather than acting in a civically and fiscally responsible manner, the tenor and discussion by the City Council, led by Councilmember Schaff, was to isolate the conversation around a contrived assertion regarding the Adams County Coroner's Office role in the tragic death of Elijah McLean. Why was it raised at that time? To the public, it appears that there is more interest in grinding an axe and opening wounds in the name of social justice. On top of that, the questions were raised and were done in a setting where the very office that Councilmember Schaaf questioned was not available to discuss or respond. It's concerning that based on the tact taken by the City Council on this topic turned from being irresponsible to being negligent when the Adams County Coroner's Office declined to renew the agreement shortly after the comments were made. The negligence caused the city and county of Broomfield to be at risk for not having a coroner for the community, and was a significant mistake that Mayor Quinn acknowledged when he said that the agreement was, quote, not handled properly, and was followed by an apology by the mayor. Now, Mayor Quinn, I want to give you credit for being the adult in the room and working to ultimately get the agreement with the Adams County coroner in place in spite of this major misstep and embarrassment to our city and community. So as I mentioned, I have 3 requests. Number 1, I would like to understand if the renewed agreement with the Adams County Coroner's Office is coming at an increased cost to the city and county of Broomfield as compared to the original agreement that was to be renewed. Number 2, I'd like to hear from the city manager's office and their perspective as to the state of the relationship between the city and county of Broomfield and the Adams County Coroner Office. I'm concerned that the city is now in a tenuous relationship with Adams County, and I hope that this is not the case. Thank you. And number 3, I would ask that Councilmember Schaaf provide a public apology for causing the city and county of Broomfield to be in a position that it finds itself in. Mayor Quinn, you demonstrated a huge amount of responsibility by apologizing
Rick,
for the situation,
Rick,
and I appreciate that.
Yeah, Rick, your time's up. Thank you. Let's go to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, state your full name and your neighborhood for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you all so much. Elizabeth Mora, North Mora Estates, and I'm just calling in to actually thank council member staff for having the courage to ask these questions, and especially now that this case is going to a grand jury, it is more important than ever that we know who we're working with and that everything was handled correctly in this case. I think it takes a lot of courage to bring these questions up, and I commend Councilmember Schaaf. And it's quite obvious that the coroner's office doesn't want to work with Broomfield, so I would actually like to recommend that we find a different county to work with. But thank you so much, Councilmember Schaaf, for doing what it takes and for standing up and asking the tough questions. I appreciate it. Have a great night.
Okay, I don't know any other questions or comments. I will, from the public, I will go to, I do have one more called James. State your full name for the record, your neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and Council. James Marsh-Holshin. I live in Brandywine. I'm also calling in to express my gratitude for Councilmember Schaaf and the other council members for having the courage to raise this issue. The tragic death of this young man obviously been in the news a lot, and anybody who's paying attention knows this was mishandled on all levels. This man's death was a murder, and it should have been treated as such. Furthermore, these questions are perfectly appropriate for Councilmember Schaaf to be asking, and they should be treated with dignity and courteous response, rather than also, if anybody's politically grandstanding, it would be the coroner's office, in my opinion. And I believe that these questions should be asked and should be answered, and Broomfield should move on and should do what we need to do to move our community forward and to keep our citizens safe. Thank you.
I don't think there's nobody else in the queue, is there, Guyleen?
There's somebody being screened again right now, Mayor.
Okay.
It appears the screen call dropped, Mayor. So if
Okay.
you want to move on.
So I will go ahead and move on, and we go to council comments. I'm going to, well, he raised his hand. I was going to let Councilmember Schaaf go first, and I'm going to give him, just so everybody knows, a little bit of latitude with time tonight. So, Councilmember Schaaf.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Ms. Brancucci Jordan, for being here with us tonight. My first question is, what was your involvement in the autopsy regarding Elijah McClain?
I'm sorry, did you ask what was my involvement in the autopsy of Elijah McClain?
Correct.
So I believe that's an autopsy that I assisted on. That would be on the autopsy report if it was.
We learned recently there is going to be a grand jury investigation into the death of Elijah McClain. Along with this, there's other investigations. So I just wanted to ask in general, are you able to comment or answer questions related to the death of Elijah McClain at this point?
Due to the multiple entities investigating this case and the initiation of the grand jury, it's not appropriate for me to discuss this case at this time. I look forward to having the opportunity to answer questions and discuss it in the future. My hope is also that many of these questions will be answered at the conclusion of these investigations. But no, it is not appropriate for me to discuss this case further.
Great, thank you. I'll keep my questions in general then. If you or someone else in your office is in a situation that presents itself as a possible conflict of interest, how is that handled in your office?
I and my staff would recuse ourselves from the case.
When there is a case, how has yourself as a coroner interact with a forensic pathologist before, during, and after the autopsy report is completed?
I interact closely with the forensic pathologist. It really depends on the nature of the case as to how involved that interaction is, but there are frequent conversations about the case and questions.
Great. When there is a death case involving a police officer or a police department, what interaction exists before and during the autopsy and before the autopsy report is completed?
Interaction with who?
The police, when there is a death involving a police, and when there is a non-police officer death that involves, that there is a possible connection to a death by a police officer or involving a police department, what is the interaction, what is the further interaction with that police officer or that police department in the investigation of that death?
I think I understand what you're asking. So the investigating agency might be the police department that was involved, or it might be another investigating agency. That is not something that I, as the coroner, get to decide. I don't get to pick which agency is investigating the criminal aspect of a case. But whatever agency is investigating the criminal aspect of the case, I am required by law to interact with.
Great. Is it common practice to have the police department around while conducting the autopsy of someone potentially killed at the hands of said police department?
Like I said, I am required by law to interact with whatever agency is investigating the criminal aspects of the case. If that happens to be the same agency that was involved in the case, then I am required to interact with them. And they routinely come to autopsies, as does the public defender if they're involved in a case, or the DA if they're involved in a case.
When a death is reported as undetermined or maybe undetermined, what is the policy and practice in your office for seeking a second opinion?
It is not common practice or policy in my office to seek a second opinion, nor is that standard of practice in the United States. However, all cases can be reviewed at any point in time by any other professional.
What would be the factor that you would need in order to seek a second opinion on a death case where it's undetermined?
That is too vague to answer. It really is case specific.
You don't have any metrics for when that second opinion would be sought?
No, if there were questions about the interpretation of the medical findings, and that is an instance where I would seek a second opinion. If the medical findings seem clear and are easily interpretable, then that is not a case that I would commonly seek a second opinion on, but it's really case specific.
Right, I appreciate that. At what point in the autopsy process are witness statements, police reports, and video of the incident gathered in order to complete the autopsy report?
Those are gathered throughout the process. So it just depends on how quickly we can get the information, what it is we're attempting to gather, but they are gathered throughout the entire process. So some of those may come in before the autopsy, some of them may come in after the autopsy is done.
But they would all theoretically come in before the autopsy report was completed?
Not necessarily. The autopsy report draft is done immediately after the autopsy, and then the final report is put out after all the information is obtained.
Mayor, can I interrupt and call the meeting to order for a second? I've got a question. The intent of this, I believe, is maybe not appropriate where it's going for online stream of questioning. It's more informational, and I think Devin can, or Councilmember Schaaf, maybe give a call to Ms. Brancucci Jordan. I think we've already put her through enough. She's a professional, and I would want to make sure that if she's welcome to continue with it, but I do think that the intent of this was to give her a chance to talk to us publicly, but not to be grilled again in public. So I'd like the council to consider not taking this line of questioning, and maybe Councilmember Schaaf, you can take that offline.
I appreciate that. You know, Councilmember Schaaf, obviously.
Wait, hold on, Mayor. So I believe that the motion was a point of order. She said that she would like to call the meeting to order, which is not correct. It is a point of order. So could you rule on that point of order, Mayor?
What I'm going to say is, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and recognize, because Monica and I and Jennifer had a lot of discussions about tonight, and part of the point about tonight was to give Ms. Brancucci Jordan the chance to respond in public to the questions that had been made in public, in public. And so my point is that was the point of tonight's meeting. But Monica, if you want to add, if you want to make a comment on, because this isn't in our book anywhere, meaning that we're trying to give you a chance to respond back to things that concerned you that were said on December 10th.
I appreciate that. I think that it's pretty clear about how I feel about Devin Schaaf and his comments. Yeah. Educating the council on the Office of the Coroner, specifically the standards of practice for police-involved deaths, is far too lengthy of a discussion for this evening. If there is a genuine interest, I am happy to host the council at my facility and arrange a presentation on this topic. I also teach every year at the 17th Judicial District Citizens Academy, and would encourage you all to attend this academy for a better understanding of the coroner's role as well as the entire judicial system. Mr. Schaaf, I think, needs a basic rudimentary understanding of the system before asking these types of questions.
Not having a script for tonight, I think your offer to invite those who are interested to participate is a very genuine offer that perhaps several of the council members should take advantage of. So I want to acknowledge that offer. I want us to consider taking up that offer before we do anything tonight. So Devin, how many more questions you want to, I mean, if you do want to get into the details of her office and what she does, I do think it might be appropriate to go ahead and meet with her directly in her office and understand the procedures that she has. Otherwise, tonight's going to be cursory and probably not as meaningful as it could be if we could have a detailed meeting with her, say sometime in the next few weeks.
Thanks, Mayor. So my understanding tonight was that I would have a chance to ask the questions that I brought up regarding the continuing the agreement for the IGA. And I understood from my my second question to Ms. Branco-Jordan that she could not comment or answer questions regarding Elijah McClain. I have made these more general to find out more about her office and the practices of her office. And those have been my questions tonight. I do still have concerns, but perhaps I'm not going to be able to ask the rest of my questions tonight and won't be able to get the answers that I need. So I'll leave it at that. And those are my questions for tonight. Thanks.
Yeah,
Mayor.
Councilmember Schaaf, I think what's being offered here, though, is something that what's being offered here is the opportunity to meet in her office, and have an in-depth discussion where we're not limited by, we do have a pretty big agenda tonight. Would you be willing to participate in that meeting?
Of course, Mayor. If the invite is there, I definitely will attend that meeting.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call on some of the members of the because frankly, I really do appreciate the opportunity to go meet in her office, and not that my comment should be said at the beginning, but I did. So let me go ahead and go to Councilmember Tessier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just I'm really grateful for this opportunity. Thank you, Ms. Branco-Jordan, for being here. And I want to add my apology, and I want to let you know that I do have the utmost respect for you and all that you do for our community. You apparently work endlessly and tirelessly. And on the other hand, I do also think that Councilmember Schaaf's questions are, in this day and age, I think times have changed, and we need to ask some tough questions, and recognizing that this case is in litigation or going to the Supreme Court, we need to back off on that. So I do appreciate your invite, and I accept. I look forward to it, and just wanted to put that out there, that and with regard to the community as well, this is not about pitting one against the other. This is about us as a council learning together and trying to understand everything. So I don't want to make this a political thing. I do want to make this an opportunity where we learn, and that we can apologize and grow from miscommunications and mistakes. And I hope that we can move forward and create a better relationship, and just wanted to put that out there. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I just want to say that I think that Councilmember Schaaf should have the opportunity to ask the questions, as that's what I understood this evening was about. And I do object to Councilmember Groom's misuse of Robert's Rules of Order and the chair not correcting it. It's called a point of order. And if you want to make it, you say point of order, not call the meeting to order. And I do believe that this was the purpose of this night. So to cut him off is something I don't agree with. But I do appreciate the offer to have a meeting.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever had a meeting with the coroner in the many years we've had this contract. So I welcome the opportunity to have regular meetings, dialogue, and to build that relationship. Thank you.
Councilmember Law Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize. First of all, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, very good. My computer's having some issues tonight, but I appreciate this opportunity to try and clear the air a little bit. I don't know if air has been cleared at all, but I appreciate the effort that's gone behind it to set this up. I do think that in the 7 years that I've been on council, we have never gone through and looked at the contract from a financial point of view. And I am happy to do that. However, I do feel that it is inappropriate for this body to try and analyze this situation, this tragic event that happened, and try and investigate it. And that was what I objected to earlier when we had the meeting some weeks ago where we approved this. Is the process. I want to make this point that the process investigating Mr. McLean's death is working. The Attorney General has called for a grand jury, and that's the way the process is supposed to work. For us as a body who has no formal responsibility in this case, for us to insinuate ourselves in that process is quite frankly inappropriate. And I understand we're all concerned about the tragic aspect of this case, but it seems to me that my responsibility to the community is to follow the process. If we disregard the process, then suddenly we are only a few short steps from some sort of mob rule, the likes of which the country has seen far too much of in the last year on both the extreme political right and the extreme political left. So I feel that I would like to get more information on this. And I think Councilmember Schaaf's procedural questions in general, understanding the role of the coroner and the procedures of the coroner's office are appropriate. Ms. Brancusi Jordan has, to my recollection, has appeared before council every single year when we have renewed this contract. And I recall that she made the invitation to us every single year. I do not know how many council members have taken her up on it. To my regret, I have not, but I shall now in the future. And I appreciate her making that gracious invitation. So at this point, I am pleased that we are moving forward with trying to understand the big picture situation as regards to the responsibilities of the coroner in Broomfield. And I hope that we can strengthen this relationship going forward because, again, in my time on council, Ms. Brancusi Jordan and her office have done a stellar job. There has never been any complaint that I recall about a case in Broomfield that office has handled. So on that basis, I appreciate the opportunity to move forward, and I very much appreciate the invitation from Ms. Brancusi Jordan to get more information on the process. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Councilmember Jerome.
Yes, I would like to take the opportunity to publicly apologize to Councilmember Schaaf if I had upset him and the rest of councils with using the wrong terminology. At the beginning of the meeting, it was said that it was the opportunity for Ms. Brancusi Jordan to come back based on the terms of her accepting the contract. So my bad interpretation, but I do think it is a line of questioning that we could definitely take up with additional training. I too have been here, 3 years now, going on my 4th, and always felt very comfortable with reaching out to the coroner's office if needed. And I haven't needed to, and I really respect you professionally. And I thank you for accepting the contract, and please keep an open line of communication with us so we can all learn and move forward. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Lim.
As a new member of council, I was actually surprised that we didn't have the opportunity to ask questions about this important contract with the coroner, especially given the recent national events concerning racial justice. I, in general, no matter what the particulars of what the coroner was involved in, I would have expected to been able to ask questions about how the coroner would investigate deaths that were a high profile in the public. The agenda item was about the coroner's contract was at the end of the year. We were backed into a corner at a time when we could hardly spend any time asking questions anymore. So I feel like we were put in a situation which was very different from the situation where the police department responded after we were asked, the public was asking questions about how the police department handled racial justice issues. The whole council was allowed to spend an extensive amount of time interacting with the police department and how they handle different situations. So I appreciated that effort by the police department to engage council in their activities so we could understand them better. And I also appreciate now that offer from the coroner to have us meet with her to understand her efforts better. But, you know, I was in the situation where I thought we would have been able to ask questions of the coroner since it does seem to me to be an important contract for the city. Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, I have a question. Council member Lim,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you're saying that you didn't have an opportunity. I just don't understand that when you can pick up the phone and call my office if you have questions.
Oh.
Well, can I clarify that comment, because it was all part of my letter comment that it was the way it got put on the agenda. And I think the Mayor Pro Tem will admit, when we talked about the agenda item before it went up, we didn't think there'd be anything controversial. And so it just didn't get put on the agenda when it should have. It should have been put on at a time in a way that there could have been questions. And I don't think that was the coroner's fault. I think it was, as I said in my letter, there were a whole bunch of things that happened, but now we have an opportunity to ask questions and go in depth.
I think it's also important to understand that, you know, I am not one of your staffers. So while I'm happy to have you out to my facility to answer questions, I'm not going to come to every council meeting where there is a high profile case or something that you want to ask questions about. That's not an arrangement I'm interested in. And maybe you need to explore options of having a different coroner or your own coroner's office if that's something that you're looking for.
Councilmember Jezierski.
Thank you, Mayor.
Jane, were you done? Councilmember Lim, were you done?
Yes, I appreciate the coroner's efforts now to invite us
Yeah. Councilmember
to
Jezierski.
ask questions.
Okay, yeah, I do want to thank Ms. Brancucci-Jordan being here tonight and answering the questions, and also inviting us to her facility to discuss this more. I think that's, I do appreciate that, but I do want to express that I was very disappointed earlier today with the statements that was made where you were really implying they're doing Broomfield a favor with these services, and that really put me off a bit. So it's leaving a bad taste in my mouth. I could say that just for some background, the questions by Devin that were raised here tonight really aren't unusual for this matter or any matter before council. I mean, he typically has questions on everything that we that are before us, and we all do. I mean, that's sort of our duty as council members, is to ask questions when we have contracts that are, you know, that we're supposed to approve. So, you know, that shouldn't have been something that was offensive to your office. And you know, ultimately, you know, as you mentioned, we did unanimously approve the contract. So there really wasn't any distrust there. So I'm a little concerned with the sort of antagonistic position that I'm sort of hearing here tonight. And you know, if this level of animosity does continue, I think it's going to be troublesome for the parties to move forward, and we may have to explore other options. So I'd be open to that, you know, if it has to go to that level.
So you know, so there's no other comments. So I'm going to try to summarize where I think we're at and see if I can get where council's headed. And Councilmember Schaaf, you know, and as I've said, and I said to Ms. Brancusia Jordan, that you have the right to ask the questions, and I'm not trying to stop you from asking the questions tonight. She offered a forum that I thought might be more, more meaningful if we would meet with her and you know, in her coroner's office and talk about that. That doesn't change the fact of the fact that we as a council should discuss continue with the 120 days, the continuation. I mean, I'm not taking that off the table. What I think we need to understand what she does and how she does it. Does she want to continue, as Councilmember Jezierski brought up? You know, I don't think we're going to get all those answers tonight, but I think the really good way to start would be for council to do a site visit to the coroner's office and understand. I think, frankly, all of us, well, maybe I understood from my previous deal, but I think quite a few of us didn't fully understand how important these services are and how important they need to be done. And I'm going to repeat what I said in my letter, and that in my 6 years as mayor, and since then, I'm not aware of any complaints there's ever been made against the coroner's office. I guess I don't think we understood the fragile relationship we had, and I think it's a fair way to state that right now. I would, you know, if the offer, you know, I'd like to, you know, I see enough heads nodding. Ms. Brancusia Jordan, if you could work with staff, specifically Jennifer, to try to set up a time that's convenient, you know, in 2-3 weeks out, so we can have a you know, a more meaningful dialogue, understand a little bit more about what services you provide and how important they are. You know, are you willing to continue? You know, can we develop a relationship on which both sides are willing to continue? You know, and then have council discuss what is its obligations. I know you're not an employee, but when we do approve contracts with contractors, council does has an obligation to ask questions and do due diligence. And so, and I'll repeat, my issue was never that. It was, we just didn't set it up in a way that it could be meaningful. We meaning staff and the mayor, but we learn every day. And so I'm going to try. So Ms. Jordan, would you be willing to set up that meeting or that time so we could meet with you at your offices in the near future?
Of course, that is a invitation that I've extended every year to this council for the last 10 years. I'm happy to set that up. And obviously I signed the IGA. I'm willing to continue this arrangement, but I think there needs to be an understanding about what I'm willing to do and what I'm not. And if you would like to go with a different coroner's office, that is, you know, that is fine with me also.
You've made that point very clear several times tonight, and which is why I use the word the fragility of our relationship, to be quite candid. So, I mean, I don't want our relationship to be fragile. I want us to come to an agreement on where you understand what we want from you, and we understand what you're going to provide. And I think meeting your offer is something that council will now take up. I categorically say in the 6 years I was mayor before, we never took you up in the offer. Well, for some of those years you weren't the coroner, but you worked for a couple of them, and so I appreciate the offer, and I'm going to leave it there, and move on. That we will have a meeting and council will have discussions about about the coroner's office, what the coroner does for us, what we need and are there options, and hopefully come to terms. So I'm going to leave it there, and we're going to move on to my proclamation. Thank you. She's gone. So thank you very much. So, let's move on to proclamations. My proclamation. The second item under petitions and communications this evening is a proclamation condemning the riots on January 6th at the U.S. Capitol, and a moment of silence to honor the fallen U.S. Capitol police officers. I will first read the proclamation, and then I'm going to ask for a moment of silence. On January 6, 2021, Congress was scheduled to certify the presidential election after the process of tallying the Electoral College votes. A mob stormed the U.S. Capitol in a chaotic riot, disrupting the final electoral count in a shocking display of violence that shook the core of American democracy. Whereas within minutes of breaching the Capitol complex, A mob was pounding on the doors of the House gallery where a group of lawmakers were trapped, including Colorado Representative Jason Crow. For over 15 minutes, those lawmakers were seeking shelter in the upper gallery in fear for their safety before being moved to a secure shelter. Whereas the riots led to deaths of 2 Capitol police officers, Brian Sicknick and Howard Liebengood, and multiple reported injuries to other courageous police officers. Whereas we condemn the acts of the rioters breaching the most sacrosanct institution in the United States and the violence that ensued. Whereas one of the most polarizing moments in our nation's history should compel Republicans and Democrats to lock arms in solidarity to denounce the violence and express their determination to carry out the will of the people. The acts of these rioters compromise their safety as well as the safety of many others. Whereas it is incumbent on all elected officials to promote a calm and thoughtful dialogue for disagreement to be aired. Whereas there is no place for divisive rhetoric in a public forum, as a city council body and as individuals, we must promote healing and stop utilizing social media platforms to incite and promote further attacks on personal beliefs. And whereas the city and county of Broomfield joins communities across the nation in condemning the deadly violence, honoring the fallen U.S. Capitol police officers, and demanding those responsible are brought to justice for their actions. Now, therefore, I, Patrick Quinn, Mayor of the City and County of Broomfield, do hereby declare and proclaim a condemning of the riots on January 6, 2021 at the U.S. Capitol, and a moment of silence to honor the fallen Capitol police officers. Let's have a moment of silence. We will now proceed with public comments. If there's any public comments on my proclamation, you will have 3 minutes. We'll recognize you for the record. I'm not seeing any public comments, Guyleen, or Mayor Pro Tem, and council member. Does any council member want to offer any comments or questions? Now would be the time to do it. Councilmember Law Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was pleased to see your proclamation come across email earlier, and I completely agree that the actions by just really a handful of, well, I can't really say what I think of them, so I'll just call them jerks, is despicable, and I completely agree that that should be condemned. There is no place, as I talked about a few moments ago with regards to the process regarding the investigation of the death of Elijah McClain. That's what our laws and civilization is built on, is the process. And in this case, for whatever reason, there's a lot of processes that have failed, and that's happened all across the political spectrum recently, and I condemn all use of violence as a tool to achieve one's ends. So thank you for this proclamation. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you, Mayor. I prepared something that's about 3 minutes. May I speak to that?
Yes.
Thank you. Let me close out. This has just been on my heart. Just want to add some thoughts to our proclamation based on the violence at our Capitol last week. The feelings that we're all feeling: despair, confusion, hurt, being overwhelmed, frustrated, trapped, anxious, dissatisfied, protective, uncertain of our future. These are just what the tip of the iceberg and what we're all feeling, but pain is something that we're all feeling too. We can't move through this pain without naming it. So what I will say, and I walk alongside my other council members in our proclamation against the violence we all witnessed, the police killings and the attack on our democracy on sacred ground, perhaps Broomfield can coalesce around a deep-seated wound we could all see with our own eyes, through the eyes of what it must feel like to not be white, because our whiteness has been a numbing agent from feeling what our BIPOC population feels every day. A good friend of mine who wanted to speak at the Solidarity March last year told me that her 15-year-old black son saw what was happening last week on TV, and he said he was too afraid to leave the house for fear he may be killed by someone who felt emboldened by the insurrection. But this isn't the first time he's felt this. So we have to think about what this means for our Broomfield BIPOC neighbors. And this isn't blame and shame, but I do think it's important to name exactly what we witnessed. As a Christian, it broke me to see a cross being erected alongside a noose, a white supremacist that wore a shirt that says Jesus saves. It broke me further to see anti-Semitic t-shirts that read Camp Auschwitz, and on the back staff, another one that said 6MWE, which means that when Hitler and the Nazis killed millions of Jews, 6 million wasn't enough. They flew an enemy flag at the Capitol. They desecrated monuments and urinated on carpets. There were bombs at both the DNC and RNC. Police officers were killed. So it's apparent that this attack isn't political. And me and my husband both voted for Bush, and it has broken his conservative heart to hear our one leader of the United States call the Charlottesville Nazis very fine people. The Proud Boys stand by. These insurrectionists and bombers, we love you. Mexican immigrants, rapists, and Muslims, terrorists. I'm thankful to hear that our Colorado Republican chapter condemned the attack, but this isn't Republican versus Democrat issue, this is deeper. And we have to wonder how we are letting a political party be ensnared by our biggest demons that we need to address, which is racism and bigotry. Thankfully, we can land on the gratefulness of the unsung heroes, quick thinking aides who protected the Electoral College votes in boxes that contain the songs of the will of the American people and our protected democracy. The Black police officer, Eugene Goodman, who lured the mob away from the unprotected Senate floor, and even our known Congressman, Jason Crow, who helped others as his only weapon was a pen. I can even see bright stars among some of my voting family and friends who are on the other side, who openly denounced the president's leadership of this attack and on the attackers themselves. So I stand unified against racism and bigotry, the violence on our Capitol, and I stand for our democracy. She is our ultimate hero, and she's going to need all of us, Republicans, Democrats, and more, to see that her great nation can heal as we all stand together against our greatest demons so that our BIPOC neighbors feel safer in Broomfield. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not noting any other comments, so I'm going to move on to Councilmember Groom.
Sorry about that. I thought my hand was raised. Yeah, I really just wanted to comment on this, and it's very disheartening. It's very upsetting to see what's happening in our country, and the fact that we're letting 5% or not 1% of the people divide us and make this a Republican versus Democrat. We all, I have not met anyone in my life or anyone has commented that they support violence in any means, any way, shape, or form, no matter what the cost is. So I just want to say to everyone on this council, I am thankful that we as Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated, independents can still move forward and talk and have open dialogue and have empathy and listen to both sides, because that's what's going to move us together as a country. And that's what they need to learn from us at the very top levels. So thank you.
Okay. I'm going to move on to public comments for items not on the agenda next. We will move to public comments next. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on matters other than the items already listed on this evening's agenda. To be placed in the queue for comment, please call 855-695-3744 and press *3. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. I'm not seeing anybody, Mayor Pro Tem. So council's community and event updates are next. Does any member of council have an update this evening? Please raise your hand. Councilmember Tessier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I was at the Housing Advisory Committee meeting on Monday, and just wanted to, they asked me to kind of let you know that they're coming. They're going to be speaking in front of council, and So Callfront and Nancy Rogers are in discussion on looking at attorneys as we transition to be an independent housing authority. And they're also looking specifically to look at relations with council and how the independent housing authority would relate to the city and county of Broomfield and the community at large. So if you have questions or want to contact them now, please feel free to reach out to them. The communications subcommittee is looking at new ways to access the silent majority and our most vulnerable. So if any of you have any ideas on how to do that, we're welcoming that. Also, the council, when we approved the matrix for the inclusionary housing zoning, believe it or not, that was in March of 2019. So we are taking a look at that again this March to review whether or not it is, you know, to determine the cash in lieu, and wondering if we need to either up the cash in lieu so it's not, because we want bricks and mortar more than the cash in lieu. So I want you to start thinking about that. And then BHAC is also getting ready to look at the program finance formula. So just wanted to throw that out there, and they are excited to come before you all. And if you had questions around anything that I said, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Housing Authority Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to let everybody know that we are accepting applications for our boards and commissions until January 24th. I don't have the website at the top of my mind, but if somebody from staff wants to chime in, I think it's broomfield.org B&C to get more information, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
City Manager.
Give us 8 seconds.
I didn't mean to stump y'all. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
I'm sure it's on there. And we would love to have as many people as we can apply. We have over 30 openings.
/boards and commissions. Broomfield.org/boards and commissions.
Thank you.
Spelled out, boards and commissions?
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
And I'll also point out, Mayor Pro Tem, that and something I guess I think I knew it, but I'd forgotten it. the planning and zoning and the plan for bifurcating planning and zoning into 2 different commissions. We're not going to be filling those positions right now. We'd had some members of the community that had questions on it, and so so I just wanted to point that out, that we will be asking for people to apply, and a lot of the members to reapply for planning and zoning. And Ms. Hoffman, when do you think that will be?
Bifurcating it is coming back to council for a second reading because we need to modify that ordinance. So we're unable to recruit until that occurs. So we believe that recruitment begins for boards. I'm looking over at for social distancing. So Abby's way at the other end of the dais. So
the tentative schedule, I believe, is February 24th, that the applications will open with a closure date of March 12th. That's the tentative schedule right now.
February 24th to March 14th.
Okay, I just want to make that comment, Mayor Pro Tem.
And C, not board and commission.
Okay. Any other comments from council or announcements? We will move on to the consent agenda. Council's consideration of the consent agenda is next. Before the clerk reads the consent agenda items by title, items 7I and 15B includes both an intergovernmental agreement as well as a resolution needing review and approval by the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority. Intergovernmental agreements require affirmative votes of 2/3 of the entire council. So for the purpose of the coordination and in the interest of time, I will convene the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority so that we may review this item as part of the consent agenda. The meeting of the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority is called to order, and I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Anderson,
Here.
Castriata,
Here.
Broom,
Here.
Hinkle,
Here.
Jaworski,
Here.
Law Evans,
Here.
Lim,
Here.
Lindstedt,
Here.
Schaaf,
Here.
Tessier.
Here.
A quorum is present. Next is council considerations of items 7A through 7J, and the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority's consideration of item 15B. Following the clerk's reading of these consent agenda items, we will ask for public comments. Will the clerk please read agenda items 7A through 7J and 15B by title?
7A, approval of minutes, regular meeting of December 8, 2020, special meeting of December 10, 2020, and special meeting of January 5, 2021. 7B, resolution number 2021-1, designating the public place for posting notices of public meetings as required by Colorado's open meetings law. 7C, certifying the mill levies of tax authorities levying mills for property tax in the city and county of Broomfield. 7D, resolution number 2021-02, authorizing the cancellation of the bad debt submitted by the revenue manager as uncollectible. 7E, resolution number 2021-12, authorizing a sole source procurement with Quadex Lining System LLC and approving an agreement for the repair of the community ditch culverts at St. Andrews Drive, Aspen Street, and East 16th Avenue. 7F, resolution number 2021-4, authorizing and approving an agreement by and between the City and County of Broomfield and Fox Tuttle Transportation Group for professional services related to the Midway Boulevard Multimodal Corridor Action Plan. 7G, resolution number 2021-11, authorizing and approving an agreement by and between the City and County of Broomfield and OTAC, Inc. for the design of the US 36 bike and ride shelters. 7H, resolution number 2021-5, authorizing and approving an agreement with Abbey and Associates LLC for consulting services regarding the development of a zero waste action plan. 7I, resolution number 2021-6, authorizing an agreement between the City and County of Broomfield and the Colorado Department of Transportation for, sorry, it cut off on me, I apologize, let me pull this up on this thing. Resolution number 2021-6, authorizing an agreement between the City and County of Broomfield and the Colorado Department of Transportation for State Highway 7 widening from I-25 to Sheridan Parkway. Resolution number 2021-19, authorizing and approving a cooperation agreement between the City and County of Broomfield and the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority, North Park West Urban Renewal Project, State Highway 7 improvements. 7J, request for letter of support for grant to study air and noise impacts of oil and gas development. 15B, resolution number 2021-20-UR, authorizing and approving a cooperation agreement by and between the City and County of Broomfield and the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority, North Park West Urban Renewal Project, State Highway 7 improvements.
Thank you, Samantha Monroe from our city clerk's office. Much appreciated. We will now proceed with public comments. Does any member of the public have comments on these agenda items? Please press *3 and state your first and last name and neighborhood for the record. I'm not noting anybody in the queue, and Mayor Pro Tem agrees, so we'll move on to council members. Does any member of council have any comments on these agenda items or questions? If so, raise your hand. Is there a motion that the recommendations contained in the staff reports for agenda items 7A through 7J and 15B be approved? Mayor Pro Tem,
So moved.
Councilmember Groom.
Second.
Is there any further discussion, or is there any discussion on these items? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Anderson,
Yes.
Castriata,
Yes.
Groom,
Yes.
Yes.
Jezierski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Lipstadt,
Yes.
Schaff,
Yes.
Tessier.
Yes.
It passes unanimously, and so we'll move on to, well, there is no business before the Board of Social Services this evening. We will convene as the Board of Health. We have one item for the Board of Health, which is staff will provide an update on COVID-19. Yesterday, Public Health staff hosted a Q&A with City Council to provide additional time for council to ask questions pertaining to COVID-19 and the impact on Broomfield. I'll also point out there was a fair amount of discussion on vaccinations. The recording of the live stream as well as the presentation slides are available on this evening's agenda. Items linked under item 9A. Staff will continue to offer these Q&A sessions with council weekly from, it says 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. Aren't we doing it at 4 o'clock? Or did we change it?
Jason?
4 o'clock is my understanding, Mayor.
Okay, so the, from 4 to 5 p.m. on Mondays, unless otherwise directed by council. The meeting of the Board of Health is called to order. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Anderson. Here. Castriata,
Here.
Groom,
Here.
Finkel,
Here.
Jezierski,
Here.
Law Evans,
Here.
Lynn,
Here.
Lipstadt,
Here.
Schaff,
Here.
Tessier.
Here.
A quorum is present. We have a copy, the board members have a copy of the agenda memorandum, which staff will summarize.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. Jason Volling, Director of Public Health, will walk us through this slide, and he and Deb Fetterspill will be available for questions. Jason?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. As was mentioned, we provided an in-depth presentation yesterday, so I'm going to hit some of the key highlights and then save time for questions. One thing is specifically what's happening around epi trends, and we're still monitoring the effect of the holidays. We're seeing we're moving past the Christmas holidays to now start to understand the impact of the New Year's holidays. Right now, we're just seeing slight increases, both in Colorado and Broomfield. We'll have to see if that's a trend that continues or plateaus and moves down. So we'll continue to monitor that. Other good news is that hospitalizations continue to decline in the state, region, and in Broomfield, although the pace of the decrease slowed specifically over the holiday season. So we'll see if that decrease begins to pick up again. Everybody has heard about the variant that is out there. The state lab continues to test for that variant. They've identified 5 cases in Colorado. At this point, those cases were not traveling, so we suspect that there may be additional cases that could be identified in Colorado. So we'll continue to monitor that. The reason the variant is important is because its transmissibility is much more higher than some of the current strains of COVID-19. And if it starts to become one of the dominant variants, we could see transmissibility increase in the state and in the region. We spent a fair amount of our time discussing vaccine distribution yesterday, and really walking through with the recent changes from the federal government and the state government, the impact to Broomfield. One thing that we did clarify is how the vaccine is actually allocated and distributed. So each week, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment is alerted to what their vaccine allocation will be. And just to provide some context is, in order for us to vaccinate everybody in phase 1A and phase 1B, we're looking at a total of 1,219,000 people that need to be vaccinated. And currently the state, as of January 7th, had received 282,000 doses, and 217,000 of those had been administered to get shots in people's arms. The other thing is over 50% of vaccines are being distributed to hospitals to vaccinate the 70+ population. 10% is being delivered to retail pharmacies to vaccinate the 70+ population. Another 20% going to federally qualified health centers, and then 20% coming to local public health agencies and our community partners. And the other thing I think that is important for us to realize is Broomfield has moved fairly quickly through vaccinating our phase 1 providers, those in the hospital system, and also our first responders. Broomfield Public Health is now focusing our energy and efforts on vaccinating those other healthcare providers that have interactions with those that may have COVID. And so we're going through that process of making sure those individuals are getting vaccinated. Another thing that is a success for Broomfield is about 10% of our Broomfield residents, 70+, have received at least 1 dose of the vaccine. And we're one of the counties that have moved quickly into that 70+ age group. And then lastly, we have 2 long-term care facilities that have been vaccinated, started on Monday, and we have a 3rd scheduled for January 23rd. Another thing I just want to emphasize is we fully acknowledge the challenges with the 70+ population and receiving the vaccine. Part of this is that the hospital systems are developing their systems for people to receive the vaccine. That means that somebody that has had a touch with that hospital system, potentially they should receive information from that hospital system of how to get an appointment. The second thing is they're setting up online portals. With all of that, we know that our 70+ population will not be vaccinated in the next week or the next 2 weeks. So we just ask for patience as we go through this process. And then finally, ending with some of the policy updates, we continue to partner with Adams 12 on their plans for potentially returning to in-person learning. They plan to make a decision by January 25th. Right now, they're considering elementary school in person and potentially hybrid for middle school and high school. Boulder Valley School District has started in-person learning for elementary, and middle school and high school have started hybrid. We've been in conversations with the local districts that are making decisions regarding the Season B CHSAA sports. Obviously, there's some concerns about specific sporting activities such as wrestling where you can't wear a mask. So we're trying to problem solve with those districts since it's ultimately their decisions on some of the ways they can mitigate that, such as testing wrestlers, potentially holding wrestlers out from school from a period of time after meets, or even the possibility of looking to delay the season until we get more vaccines out there. But ultimately, it's the decision of the districts, the governor's office, and CHSAA. And then lastly, great success with our Back to Business certification program. 22 businesses have been certified by our administrative committee as of January 11th. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions we didn't answer yesterday.
Okay, we'll go to public comments next. If there's anybody here that wants to comment, so we have somebody who wants to come on 11A. I'm just checking, this is item 9. I don't see anybody who wants to comment on or ask questions on this, so I'll go to council and start with Councilmember Tessier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for that presentation, Jason. I'm sorry I couldn't make it to the presentation you gave on Monday. I can't make those typically due to work, but I just had one quick question. I know you guys are doing everything you can to get the seniors their vaccinations, and I wasn't sure if like a mobile vaccination, is there any discussion if a mobile vaccination kind of process would work? I think our seniors are a little confused. They have to kind of, go to their provider's website, check hour by hour sometimes. I got a letter from a particular senior, and then some of the seniors are calling fish, and, there's a lot of confusion if they're not technologically savvy. There's that too. So I don't know, maybe you could talk a little bit about that, or like how you plan on maybe the process to vaccinate the remaining seniors. That would be most helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tessier, and I appreciate the question. A couple things to keep in mind as far as the specific allocations that are coming to Broomfield Public Health. We right now have a very limited supply. So as we start to think about mobile vaccination clinics, we want to be very thoughtful and targeted in the approach, not to create a expectation out in the community. And you're seeing some of this in other states where they're doing large or even mid-size drive-through clinics and people waiting in line for a full day and then ultimately not being able to get their vaccine. So what we've been doing with my leadership team is really focusing our energy and efforts now that we understand fully the state's plan of how do we equitably get the vaccine out to Broomfield residents that are 70 plus. And what that involves is the partnership that we have with the hospital systems. So we've spent the day today on the phone with all of our hospital systems to figure out specifically what are they doing to reach our Broomfield residents as part of their catchment areas. The second thing that we're doing is reaching out to our federally qualified health centers and better understanding their plans. And then the third thing we are doing is we're specifically identifying those areas where we do believe there could potentially be gaps in not being able to get the vaccine, and how could we directly administer that and get the vaccine out to those individuals and groups. And we've started that outreach already, our team, identifying specific neighborhoods and some of the ambassadors within those neighborhoods to make sure it can happen. As we get that fleshed out, we plan to execute on it. And then the next step of that is we're already doing two things. One is planning for this immediate 70 plus, but also planning for where do we need to go in the future. So as we talk about moving further on down the list, we're going to get to 65 and then we're going to get down to our phase 2 group. And we want to be really well positioned to be able to execute on all of that. And I shared yesterday, our strategy is to make sure as many of our providers in Broomfield are enrolled as providers, because that's the natural network for people to go and get vaccines, either their pharmacy or their provider. If they can't do that, that's the gap filling role that public health will step in and fulfill. So more information to come on that as our plans get fleshed out, but the outreach is happening right now.
Thank you so much. And just again, gratitude, much gratitude to you and your team. You have been working just phenomenal amounts, and we appreciate you. And I just want to make sure that you have all the team members that you need in order to make this successful and to not wear yourselves too thin or out completely. Burnout is so real right now, and you know, I care deeply about the health and wellness of you all as much, you know, and just really want to make that clear. I'm going to start crying, but like, I know how much you guys do. So it's much appreciated, and just want to just make sure you're taking care of yourselves and in this process too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Tessie. I appreciate that. And I can tell you, we have the full support when we go to the city and county manager's office on additional resources that we need and the timing of that to have those conversations. And so if that ever gets to the point where we know that we need to make that ask, we're ready to go. And our county, city and county manager is always willing to hear what we need.
Any other questions or comments? You know, I'll repeat something I said yesterday. You know, there are a couple of things, Jason, on your staff. I'd ask questions about some of the numbers, you know, to be more clear, so you can see the weekly totals. And I'm unbelievably impressed on how those numbers popped out. And I just want to thank everybody for that. And I also want to just say that, and it's kind of a strange night to say the least, so I'm going to be careful in my wording here, but it's almost at times embarrassing how nimble Broomfield is. We were so quick out of the gate to get the business. You know, it became clear that, you know, it became pretty clear over Christmas, and I think Jennifer and I first talked about it the Tuesday before Christmas, that, you know, it was pretty clear that that's what the city wanted and that's what the council wanted, and we moved with lightning speed. You know, you guys, 23 inspections, and I guess I haven't asked you what happened to the 23rd one, but we approved 22 last week. You know, that I just want to say for the record, and I said, you know, I was interviewed a few times this week, you know, just because I guess that's what mayors get to do. And but how the staff moved, and, you know, from Jennifer on down to Chief Krager, because I think what makes it so impressive was how multidisciplinary, you know, the response was. And the businesses obviously responded. I mean, I think I read today it's 45 applications now. So for everybody to know, you know, on the business, you know, we have an administrative committee, and it's required by, you know, by how we got enabled by CDPHE, that we'll meet every Friday morning at 10 a.m. You know, just so there's no disruptions. And I want to give Jennifer and you credit for that, making that a standing meeting so you don't have to worry about scheduling each time. So I suspect there'll be more approvals on Friday. Is that correct, Jason?
That's my understanding. And Jen, okay. you agree?
But I mean, it's, you know, once again, when you're sitting talking to other mayors, you know, like you take the mayor of Westminster, he's in Jefferson and he's in Adams County. And then if you add Adams County, then you have the Tri-Counties Health, and they feel so far removed. And, you know, and they care as much as we do to have their businesses up and operating, that it's embarrassing because we're able to leap out ahead about everybody else, but I'm glad we can do that for our businesses. So thank you, Jason. And we will move on well, I'll start out with, there's no business before the Broomfield Housing Authority this evening. So we'll move on to council business at 7:30. So our first item under council business this evening is the public hearing and council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2146, stating the prohibition of certain marijuana establishments in Broomfield. I will declare the public hearing open. We will follow the city standard public hearing procedures. First, staff will present a summary of the proposal. Next, we will have the applicant's presentation if applicable. Then we will ask for public comments and final comments. You know, well, there's no applicant here, and finally questions and comments from the city council. So council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which staff will summarize.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Christine Franciscani will walk us through this second reading. You will notice that the date has been extended from April to May 1st. That is a buffer. We will talk more about that. Staff is intending to meet that April 1st guideline, but it's really dependent on how well staff captured the first go-around from council and resident comments. We just want to be sure that staff had enough time that if there's fundamental changes after the second round, that we have time to incorporate them to ensure that the final product is exactly what council and the community wants and is expecting. Christine?
Good evening. This is the second reading of ordinance number 2146. The moratorium on marijuana establishments in Broomfield currently expires on January 30th, 2021. Next slide, please. As currently drafted, the ordinance will allow the prohibition on retail marijuana sales to expire on April 1st, 2021, while the prohibition on cultivation and manufacturing will stay in place through April 1st, 2025. On December 8th, 2020, Council approved the ordinance on first reading, which was followed by a study session to discuss marijuana regulation on December 15th, 2020. Next slide, please. While staff does remain confident that the April 1st date remains achievable, staff wants to ensure that if at the next council meeting, which is the first reading of the marijuana regulation ordinance and is set for February 23rd, 2021, Council identifies additional fundamental modifications that require significant changes, staff has the time to go back and update the regulations. Staff would thus like to build in the buffer that Ms. Hoffman referenced and is requesting and recommending that the ordinance be amended at this second reading to extend the moratorium an additional month until May 3rd, 2021. If Council approves the amendment to the ordinance to change April 1st to May 3rd, which is the only change proposed, it will need to adopt the ordinance as amended. If the ordinance is adopted, it will go into effect on February 1st, 2021. That ends my presentation.
Thank you. We will now proceed with public comments, and we've got a couple. So we'll start with Jan. Jan, please state your full name for the record and your neighborhood, and keep your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Hello, this is Jan Billsborough. I'm a resident in the Red Leaf neighborhood. Thank you, Mayor Quinn and members of the council, for your interest in developing thoughtful regulations regarding marijuana retail sales. I appreciate the staff recommendation to extend the moratorium to May 3rd and the work that the staff is doing. Finalizing regulations with only one additional study session and 2 council agenda items is not providing enough time to consider all the issues related to regulating this industry in our community. You have committed to ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of the community. The council needs to devote the same amount of time and energy to marijuana regulations as you did in addressing oil and gas regulations. Those regulations have been called a gold standard and the best regulations in the country. The citizens and youth of our community deserve no less. We need to develop regulations that are better than the state, which are just a basis for municipal decision-making. At the December study session, it was mentioned that marijuana is very regulated because of the number of pages of regulations. The quantity of pages does not indicate the level of quality of the regulations. Just one example is that the state limits 3 shapes of marijuana edibles, but there are many other shapes that appear like candy to children. Also, the science related to the effect of increased THC concentrations has not kept up with the regulations. Or I should say the regulations have not kept up with the science. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, in a December presentation, indicated that a key issue downplayed by the industry and ignored by the states is the risk of adverse outcomes to our children and young adults. It included the fact that marijuana's mental health and related outcomes in Colorado are worse than the nation. It shows that Colorado marijuana use has increased for all age groups from 2016 to 2019, and marijuana use disorder in Colorado 12 to 17-year-olds is twice the national average. Please do not rush. Develop the best possible regulations protecting children and young adults, and straighten the community health improvement plan to address the significant mental health issues resulting from increased access to marijuana. These steps need to occur before the moratorium ends.
Yeah.
Thank
you,
you
Jan.
for your consideration.
And we'll move on then to James. James, state your full name and neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. This is James Mars Holton, living in Brandywine. I want to thank Council for their leadership on this issue, and I'm very excited to see this issue go forward. The tax revenues that we will be able to realize from this industry that are currently going to other localities will help this community pay for everything that we need to, especially given the COVID downturn that we're currently in. I am curious on the decision to extend the moratorium on production another 4 years. I understand the desire to go slow and to take this in steps, but I would be curious to know how much revenue we are giving up in that issue and what the regulations would have looked like if we had decided to go forward with that. I appreciate the previous caller and the need to regulate thoughtfully and to do it well. However, I do believe that we have many examples from other communities surrounding us of how they have worked with this industry to protect our children and protect the health and safety of the community. I do not believe that it is a danger like it is put forth at times to children. Having gone to a marijuana shop once or twice, I can tell you that the level of security and difficulty in getting in is much higher than that of a liquor store, and the dangerous aspects of alcohol are significantly more than that of marijuana. So I do believe that it is worth going forward with this, and I'm looking forward to seeing these small businesses in our community, and I appreciate what council is doing. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, James. I'm not knowing anybody else in the queue. So we will move to City Council comments or questions. City Council. Councilmember Lindstedt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep it very, very brief. I'll just say that, I'm very grateful to staff for working so hard on these regulations, and I look forward to having a thoughtful discussion next week. And until then, I know there was one resident who emailed in about about the moratorium, just to inform the community. This moratorium is meant to exist while we craft these regulations so that we can, create a thriving, industry that we can benefit from with new jobs and tax revenue, while keeping our community safe. So that's our intent, and I look forward to having a strong discussion next week.
Councilmember Grove.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure there's a couple things. One, our discussion on the mental health plan that should go along with these ordinances. I'm hoping to see that also with the dates on this moratorium extension. What I would be asking for, I guess I'm not formulating my words very well right now, is what are the dates for that mental health plan that couple and in parallel we approve for release on April 1st or in May, whenever this is approved. And then secondly, the date of May, what was that based on again? Just to give us elbow room? Or was there any, we're still shooting for May 1st, but we're extending it to May?
Yes, Council Member Grimm, we're shooting for April 1st, which was the date that we initially proposed. But in order to give the staff some breathing room, if it ends up being necessary, in particular after we see what happens at the meeting next week, that's why we're requesting the amendment to May 3rd.
Oh, okay. I just find it odd because I would think that we would wait to extend it once we understood the level of comments that were given. Because it could be May, it could be June. So I'm trying to understand why we're doing this now and not when we get the comments.
I think it's the two readings part that it's not like, so the breathing room was requested by staff and didn't want to go through two separate readings if we had to extend it for a month.
Got it. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Okay. City Manager Hoffman, do you want to address the question of the mental health plan? Jennifer?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So like anything else that we're doing right now, it is in conjunction. There aren't any standalone discussions with regards to the marijuana rules and regulations. Public health is an intimate part of that. So our CHIP program, we've been sending some information out to council. That process will pick up as we begin to integrate what that support system looks like. So again, it's a very integrated model, Councilmember Groom, that we'll continue as we move through on these regulations to ensure a strong communication with our mental health partners and the state capabilities that they have found from that support network. Again, there's a lot of comprehensive, deeper dives with regards to mental health that COVID has really provided and prompted. So when we're looking at the impact of COVID and increased substance abuse and the suicides, all of those components are really reducing that stigma, which overall is a really wonderful thing with regards to mental health. But it's also a wonderful thing because with timing of our marijuana regulations, those support capabilities are even more established than they were before. So it's more or less kind of threading that needle to ensure that there really isn't any stone unturned as we move forward.
Thank you. I'm looking for more though. I understand our programs and we've got great ones, but with the marijuana, I'm looking at a significant increase in our health, our mental health services, not just existing programs. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, Councilmember Law Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would like to echo Councilmember Groom's comments concerning we absolutely need to provide more mental health support. And as our city manager noted, the mental health toll the last year from the pandemic has been terrible, really, really terrible. But anyone who thinks that there will not be mental health fallout from having more marijuana available in our city, I believe is kidding themselves. This is not, the comparison that's always made is, well, it's not as bad as alcohol. And that's a terrible comparison simply because it doesn't matter if it's as bad as alcohol, it's bad enough on its own. And it will have mental health repercussions. And the repercussions can be, I have family members who have been addicted to marijuana for many years. And I don't want to go into that right now, but don't kid yourself. There are long-term mental health effects from this. And I want to make sure that as much mental health support as we can put in place, as Councilmember Groom has said, we'll need all of it. So I agree with Councilmember Groom. I'm looking for a significant uptick in mental health services offered and provided with this. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Lim.
I had a question for staff. The study session next week, what will we see come forward? Are we going to see revised regulations based on public comments? And then some of us, perhaps, I know I did, submit follow-up written questions, suggestions. What are we going to see at the study session next Tuesday? Are we going to see a response? Yes, we already revised these regulations to reflect this. We haven't thought about this yet. Or C, we haven't, no, we're not going to include this at all. What kind of feedback are we going to get to our comments that already occurred?
There has been a great deal of revision to the regulations, and we are still doing some work to that. That will absolutely continue. There are questions that we are aware of from the past study session that we have not been able to get answered yet, but a great number of the questions are in the draft council memo right now with answers to them.
Okay, thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll support the 1-month extension of the moratorium as padding. I really don't want to kick it down the road, as it has been mentioned that this is every month we wait, that's one less month we get the revenue and the benefits. I also want to address the mental health concerns that have been brought up. It has been proven that medicinal marijuana has helped people with trauma to get off of opioids. It helps with pain, inflammation, all sorts of medical uses. Children use it but with their parents because it stops seizures. I have a constituent whose family would have to drive very far to get this medicine for their child, and it is life-saving. So we need to balance some of the myths and the facts and back up these allegations with actual medical research before going off the deep end. But thank you.
Any other questions or comments from City Council? There being no further comment. Oh, Councilmember Lindstedt.
Oh, I was just going to make a motion, Mayor, so continue.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. We will let you make the motion. There being no further comments, the public hearing before the City Council is closed. Next is Council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2146. Will the clerk please read proposed ordinance number 2146 by title?
Ordinance number 2146, extending the prohibition on operation of certain marijuana establishments within the city and county of Broomfield. Second and final reading.
Okay, Councilmember Lindstedt.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that ordinance number 2146 as amended be adopted on second and final reading and ordered published in full.
Councilmember Hinkle.
Second.
Is there any discussion or further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Castriota,
Yes.
Broom,
Yes.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jaworski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaaf,
Yes.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
So it passes unanimously. City Manager Hoffman, it is 7:50. I get the impression 11B might take a few minutes, and so you want to go ahead and take the break right now?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so let's go ahead and take the break, and we'll be back at 8 o'clock. So we'll take a 10-minute break until 8 o'clock, and I'll see you then.
The Access Live event is in music hold.
Doug, you about ready?
Yes, Mayor. I was about to catch you down. Ready?
I am.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Music hold ended.
Welcome everybody back. Our next item, we're moving on to 11B, which is 15A under urban renewal. This is the public hearing and council consideration of proposed regulation number 2021-13, approving the site development plan and improvement agreement for a Gallery Park, a 1.99 acre public park within Broomfield Urban Transit Village. This item also includes proposed resolution number 2021-14-UR for the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority's review. We previously convened the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority and will review both resolutions concurrently. I will now declare the public hearing open. We will follow the city standard public hearing procedures as previously outlined. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Anna Bertonzetti will walk us through this item, and of course, the applicants are here to field any additional questions after their presentation. Anna?
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Mayor, City Council, Anna Bertonzetti, Planning Director. If we could have the next slide, please. The applicant this evening is requesting consideration of a development proposal for a park that's just under 2 acres in size within the Arista neighborhood. The property is located south of Arista Place, west of Destination Drive, north of the future extension of Parkland Street, and adjacent to and east of a recently approved multifamily project called the Steadfast Development. Next slide, please. The land use designation on our comprehensive plan is open lands, which is consistent with a public park. Next slide, please. The original 2006 site development plan for this property was designed to be of a passive style park space with very few amenities and dense landscaping. In addition, there were also easements across the site that limited the layout of the park design. Those easements have since been removed and are no longer necessary based on the development to the west and surrounding properties. Next slide, please. The revised park site is laid out with a circular gathering area that they're calling the council ring. It's a common term used for a circular seating area, separating the primary play lawn on the southern side of the site from the dog park amenity that's on the northern end of the site. Landscaping beds are used to shape the park site and separate the various amenities areas from the public streets. There are shades trees located throughout, and the plans incorporate 3 locations: the northeast corner, the southeast corner, and the center of the council ring for public art displays in the future if the city desires. 2 public dog parks are incorporated to separate the larger dogs from smaller dogs, and the dog parks feature overhead lighting that's placed on a timer to go off in the late evening to ensure or due to the proximity of residential in the area. There are 30 angled parking spaces incorporated along the western edge of Destination Drive, and there's sidewalks leading from the park site to the adjacent properties. There are no play structures proposed since 2 additional parks within the Arista neighborhood, both Sensory and Shepsfield, have play structures in the immediate area. Next slide, please. All of the parks within the Arista neighborhood are uniquely designed by the developer to provide different amenities. Gallery Park is the last public park to be constructed within the Arista neighborhood under the existing PUD plan. Next slide. A concept review was initially held for a public park along with the Steadfast development in 2019. Based on that concept review, there were concerns expressed regarding a potential relocation of the park and there were potential noise, air quality concerns with that relocation. Therefore, the applicant has made the location of the park consistent adjacent to Destination Drive as proposed this evening. In 2019, the applicant also held a neighborhood meeting with the homeowners associations for both the KB Home and Century Communities projects. They discussed the park placement, traffic, parking, and concerns with increase in number of dogs in the community. The public hearing notification requirements were met for this property. And there is an improvement agreement along with the site development plan, urban renewal site plan this evening. The improvement agreement outlines the developer's obligations and triggers for completing the improvements associated with this particular park. The improvement agreement requires completion of this park concurrent with the adjacent residential development, which is the Steadfast development to the west. The developer has completed one park per year for the last few years. As previously mentioned, this is the last park to be developed, and Steadfast is scheduled to begin construction hopefully this year, which would ensure compliance with, again, the developer's intent to complete all of the parks by the end of this year. Next slide, please. Staff has identified no key issues with this proposal. On November 23rd of 2020, the Planning and Zoning Commission did consider the site development plan, urban renewal site plan. During the meeting, there were some concerns expressed by the commissioners, including the inclusion of a dog park, since there is another dog park available within Arista, the use of crusher fines, pathways, the lack of shade areas to sit, and how whether the play lawns could be usable with the trails bisecting the trail or the play lawn. A motion for approval was made by one of the commissioners, but failed by a vote of 3-3. And the commission ultimately voted 6-0 to recommend denial of the proposal with the findings listed on the screen. The applicant has provided a response included as attachment 1 to the staff memorandum. The applicant removed all crusher fines pathways that bisected the site, changed the remaining crusher fines to pathways to concrete. They added 3 locations for the public art displays, expanded the turf lawn, added shade trees and evergreen trees, and shifted the walkways within the park to maximize the uninterrupted area for the turf play lawn. The one item that the applicant did not address was the dog amenity. The dog park is still included in the plans since the applicant felt that this amenity had been requested by residents in the previous homeowners association meeting and felt that it was appropriate to keep this amenity moving forward to the city council for consideration. And thank you, Mayor and members of the council. That concludes my staff presentation. And as mentioned, the applicant is here this evening for a brief presentation and to answer any questions.
Okay, so we'll go to the presentation by the applicant. Just as we encourage staff to keep their presentations brief, I ask the applicant to be concise in the presentation as well. Will the applicant's representative please identify themselves for the record prior to beginning their brief presentation this evening?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. My name is Joe Zapita. I'm representing the Arista Development this evening. My address is 555 El Dorado Boulevard in Broomfield, 80021. As previously mentioned a moment ago, tonight we're presenting to you what will be the final park to be constructed at the Arista Development. And also, as just mentioned, the past 3 years we've completed a park each year, starting with Uptown Park in 2018, Shipsville Park in 2019, and this past year in 2020, Terrace Ponds Park. There are just a couple of site amenities at Terrace Ponds, such as benches and tables that have to be installed. Those are on delayed delivery due to COVID, but essentially the park is complete. If you've not driven by that park lately, I would encourage you to do so and take a look at it. I think you will be impressed on how well it came out. So with the completion of Terrace Ponds Park that we just did last year, that brings the total number of parks at the Arista Development for a total of 7. 7 parks are now complete. And so when we complete Gallery Park, which we're discussing this evening, that will conclude the park commitment, and that will total a total of 8 parks at the Arista Development. So here tonight to supplement the staff report is our consultant, Leanne Blair with Norris Design. Thank you.
Good evening. Mayor, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great,
Please,
thank you so
please
much.
continue.
My name is Leanne Valier with Norris Design at 1101 Bannock Street, Denver, Colorado. Thank you, Anna, for your thorough presentation, Mayor, council members, and staff for your evening tonight, for your time, excuse me, this evening tonight. We're very excited to be here to talk about the last piece of the open lands puzzle at Arista. Next slide, please. In an effort to avoid repeating or at least minimizing the repetition with Anna's presentation, I do want to mention that in Gallery Park, as a reminder, was approved back in 2006, and it was originally designed as a passive collection of outdoor rooms, and that was inspired by the prairie style of the late 19th century and early 20th century. And the opportunity to take a fresh look at the park's design has provided the opportunity to update it not only to respond to the needs of the residents, but then also to make sure we're being mindful of the maintenance capabilities and desires of the Parks Department. The overall design of Gallery Park remains intact, but has been greatly updated in terms of function for all. The turf areas have been expanded to meet the edge of the park, creating easy access from all directions. And the variety of turf sizes provide flexibility and opportunity for both small, intimate gatherings as well as larger, more active activities. As was mentioned, we've added 3 locations for potential future art. Those are the blue stars on your screen. Next slide, please. The park features the central council ring, which is our gathering plaza with seating, lighted bollards, and the future art location. This council ring is an element commonly found in the prairie style parks, and the prairie style influenced the overall Arista landscape. And circular elements of the council ring can be seen in design elements both at Arista Park and at Century Park. Next slide, please. Anna did a great job summarizing the concept hearing that we had back in March of 2019. The only thing that I'll expand on is that in converting the on-street parking, the parallel parking along Destination Way to angled parking, that's resulted in a net increase of approximately 10 spaces. At Planning and Zoning Commission hearing on November 23rd, commissioners had concerns over a few design elements within the park. Their first concern was that the dog park was unnecessary given the proximity to Sheps Field. As mentioned, there was a meeting last year with community members, and the neighbors raised concerns about the existing dog waste problem and the impacts of the addition of steadfast residents and how that would impact the current dog park. You know, Arista is a very dog-friendly community, and so we anticipate that the number of dog owners will continue to increase, not only with the addition of steadfast apartments, but as future developments within Arista begin to fill in as well. And we believe that this additional dog area will not only be an asset to the existing residents, but future residents as well, and will hopefully help to reduce any future dog-related complaints. And for that reason, we thought it was important to keep it in the overall design. Next slide, please. In addition, the second concerns from the Planning and Zoning Commission was centered around the usefulness and maintenance of the internal Crusher Fines Trail. What's in front of you right now is a comparison between the design that we brought in front of the P&Z and then the updated design in front of you tonight. The commissioners, felt that the walkway through the middle of the turf limited the usefulness of the grass area. And so in response to that and those concerns, we've removed the portion of trail along the south of the council ring to provide that uninterrupted turf area. And the turf also has been expanded to the sidewalks to greater create access to the park and eliminate the need for the trail. Finally, all remaining trails were converted to concrete for ease of maintenance and usability all year long. Lastly, the commissioners felt that the park lacked shade trees and greenery. So the park design has been revised to address this concern with addition of more deciduous shade trees and evergreen trees. The shade trees have also been located around the edge of the turf, providing opportunity for shade while while maintaining the open turf for flexible use and ease of maintenance. Some of the ornamental trees were switched to evergreen trees to provide that year-round color and greenery. And the expanded turf area has resulted in less native seed areas and strategically placed planting beds. The Planning and Zoning Commission chose to make a recommendation of denial rather than approval with conditions because they wanted to put teeth, as they stated it, behind their conditions. They asked that we work with staff to address their concerns prior to coming before you tonight, which we were happy to do so. So our team is here and available to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
So that concludes the applicant's presentation?
It does.
Okay. So we'll go to public comments next. We do, anybody who's on the line, please press star 3 to go into the queue. We do have Jake on the line. Jake, I need you to state both your first and last name for the record, and then the neighborhood that you live in, and then you have 3 minutes.
My name is Jake. Cool. Hi. My name is Jake S. I live in the Arista Apartments, actually within direct line of sight of what is, I guess, currently the dirt pile and will be that nice looking park that we received in the envelope. I was just wondering, this park and the surrounding ones, there's been a lot of geese around and they poop everywhere and you step in it and sometimes you're just like playing hopscotch with this poop. And I'm just wondering if there are plans to clean this poop up or deal with the geese in general. I mean, they're lovely, but come on, the poop. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I guess normally I do allow the applicant, I don't see any other questions from the public. So I guess I'll give the applicant the chance to respond to that. Is there anybody from the applicant that wants to respond on the issue of waste from geese? Oh, there is.
Mr. Mayor, this is Joe Zepeda.
Okay.
I'll just respond to that. There's a couple of elements within Arista. One is the public parks that are maintained by the city and county. So if there's poop in those parks, then it's a responsibility of the cities as part of that maintenance to do that. Secondly, within the individual communities itself, they should be self-policing on how they handle that.
Yeah, fair enough. We do have one other comment, person that wants to give public comments. Sheila, please state your full name and your neighborhood for the record, and then you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Sheila Higgins, and I live in the KB Home community in Arista. I'm also the vice president of the HOA board for the Arista community. And I would just like to state my support for the park and the proposal as presented. As noted, Weens Capital and the Arista Urban Development has worked closely with the HOA for both the two communities here in the Arista development. And the park design reflects the key items we wanted: additional parking and the dog park. The dog park is extremely important, and I will echo what Joe said. There are a lot of dogs, and the dog park is extremely important. I guess that's all I wanted to say, is I support the park plan as is and would really like to see the park built as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. And so then I'll one last chance for the applicant if there's any responses they want to make. I think you commented we'll have the city maybe address the geese issue, maybe citywide, but they may want to wait until they have a chance to respond to that, gather their response. I think the applicant has indicated they've responded, so we'll move on to city council and authority members. Any questions or comments from the city council or the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority members please raise your hand and you'll be called on. Councilmember Tessier.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just, this is a long time coming, Joe. Yay. It looks really good. I'm excited and just looking forward to Arista residents getting what they wanted. It was nice to hear. And I don't know if there's any sort of communication between the management at Arista and between the city and county of Broomfield, because I'm sure there's, it's easy to point fingers. It belongs to this person, belongs to that person. And I didn't know if there's an opportunity here to work with different either HOAs or metro districts to figure out ways in which we can clear like health hazards out. Like if there's a group of people that can do it at the at Arista to clear the poop at their at Arista, is there a way that, or can Arista, if they get complaints, call the city and county of Broomfield in a timely manner? I don't know how this would work, but it seems to me that there's an opportunity here that could help a lot of residents out, because I'm sure Arista is not the only place that has a lot of geese poop. And I know by the library and stuff, it's cleared off regularly, and it's wonderful. So I can hear, I feel for the caller's plea to remove that. So hopefully we get a good response from our staff and we can figure out a way to clear that up.
Okay, Councilmember Law Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Councilmember Tessier, if you figure out a way to deal with goose poop that's easy and cost effective, you can make so much money doing that, my friend, because I agree, down by the library especially, it's insane. But I also agree with the caller, and I don't know what to do with it. Ms. Hoffman, this is a strange question to talk about goose poop at a city council meeting, but whatever. Do we still have, well, okay, so it's what we do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that validation. I appreciate that. Do we still have a contract with the guy who had the sheepdog converted to a goose dog to chase them off?
Councilmember Law Evans, so we're all reminiscing about the number of options we have exhausted over the years. One of the and that's the $64,000 question. I can tell you though that some of our young folks who come up with the best ideas over at the STEM school, right. That's one of the problems that they are solving. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders have taken it under advisement, what to do, how to do it from a preventative perspective, once it happens perspective, a cleanup perspective, and then a composting perspective. So I venture to guess that mindset will come up with something pretty exciting.
Well, I wish them all the best.
We'll keep you posted.
Yeah. Joking aside, it is a public health issue. It is an issue, and I do recall, not to switch topics on everyone, but there have been concerns with the new civic center, the town center project, with as much lawn as we're going to have there. And somebody somewhere years ago said that there was actually a type of grass you could plant that the geese were not in favor of or didn't like, or I don't know. So I think that maybe the developer can look into that and go talk to the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So Joe, we'll put that on your plate. You can go talk to the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders and see what they have coming along. But it is an issue. So I appreciate that, and let's keep working on it. Also, I would echo Councilmember Tessier's comments in another way, in that this has been a long time coming. For those of you who've been around a while, there was, I won't say a problem getting the parks done. That's a little too strong, but it did seem like the timeline became kludgy. How's that for a phrase? And so it's very exciting to see this last park in Arista come to fruition. So I support this. I appreciate the developer's thoughtful changes to the plan and in response to planning and zoning's comments. So I think that's all I have. Just go 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Thank you.
Councilman Evans, I'll ask you, my daughter coordinates a lot of this stuff. Leslie, have you been to one of those STEM deals where they tackle the projects?
No, I have not. I didn't know such a thing existed.
My daughter's been doing this for 10 years. Those kids are pretty darn amazing. I'll just make a pitch for problem-based learning and middle-aged students on behalf of my daughter Leslie. So Councilmember Groom.
They're certainly tackling a real-world problem with this one.
Yep. Councilmember Groom.
Certainly. Give me 1 second. I was off doing a few emails here. I got to get to my notes. Sorry. You'd like to go to somebody else. I'm happy.
I'll go with Councilmember Schaaf.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mayor. Getting back to the development at hand, I'm glad to see the park has moved away from Wadsworth Boulevard and to the east along Destination Drive and Parkland Street. This is a much better location for this park, and I'm appreciative for the thoughtful design by the applicant. I do appreciate the work by the applicant following the planning and zoning hearing. I think these changes were necessary for my consideration and for approval tonight. So I'm glad to see the applicant worked with those suggestions by the planning and zoning and made those updates. The one concern I have on this, and I'm hoping that will be answered by our staff, is on those turf areas. Will Parks and Recreation be utilizing these large turf areas that are on this park?
Thank you, Councilmember Schaaf. I don't believe that this is going to be used for programming, and Planner Joshua Alhava has just confirmed that for me that yes, our Parks Department does not intend to use this for programming.
Okay, so I'll ask the developers, do you have any planned programming for these large turf areas on this park?
No.
So they're just passive turf areas is the primary purpose?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well,
sorry, I could add one thing. They are available if the neighboring communities, want to organize something, or they're available for all to use and to program as to their individual needs, I guess, unofficially program.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope they're utilized. I hope that turf doesn't just sit there and collect irrigation water. I hope they are utilized. And I guess we'll see as the park is built and is utilized in the future. So thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Groom.
Mr. Mayor, can I respond to that?
Yes, you may.
Yeah, I hope so too, Councilmember Schaaf, because this was a change that was requested at Planning and Zoning. They wanted to see the large turf. We felt like the trail going through it would be a better use, but they wanted to see it. So I'm in agreement. I hope it gets used as well, because I wasn't in favor of this change.
Well, and I don't know if our staff can answer that, but usually the reason that we don't have trails go through the middle of a large turf area is because of fields and the ability for our recreation staff to utilize those fields. So it's surprising to me that planning and zoning and our staff would request trails not to intersect that large turf area and then not be able to program those areas.
Okay. I think that was a comment, so I'll go to Councilmember Groom.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the delay, Mayor. I just had a couple comments. Compliment on the design. I really like it. I have spent a significant amount of time in that area walking my dogs with my son since he lived up there for a while. And an extra dog park is definitely needed. There's a lot of pet-friendly residents and a high population, high density in that area. So I am very excited to see even the 2 separate dog parks between the small dog and the larger dog. And the only upgrade or comment I would like to see is some more seating. One of the things I find when I go to a lot of the parks, even in the rest of Broomfield, and I know City Manager Hoffman and I have talked about it before, is really just enhancing seating area all across Broomfield. And not just little park benches, but those face-to-face kind of chairs that sit next to each other, or even incorporating art or design into that seating to enhance the area. So love the design. That's the only comment I have. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I was just thinking about the grass area. I guess what I envisage, because the people there don't have yards, and I don't have a yard, and so I picture, moms and daughters and dads and sons out there throwing the ball, unprogrammed stuff on, park type land, and then wiffle ball. Do people play wiffle ball anymore? My kids and I used to play wiffle ball a lot, and it seems to have a grass. So I kind of like the unprogrammed grass area for particularly because the people don't have yards. So we'll move into we'll close out the public hearing. There be no further comments. The public hearing before. Let me make sure I'm at the right place here. I was. There will be no further comments. The public hearing before the City Council and the Urban Renewal Authority is closed. First is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2021-13. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2020-13 by title?
Resolution number 2021-13, approving the Broomfield Urban Transit Village filing number 4, replat B, lot 2, site development plan and improvement agreement.
Councilmember Groom.
I move that resolution number 2021-13 be adopted.
Councilmember Tessier.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Groom,
Yes.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Kuczynski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes, thank you.
Lim,
Yes.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaaf,
Yes.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Castriata.
Yes.
It passes unanimously. Next is the authority's consideration of proposed resolution number 2020-14-UR. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2021-14-UR by title?
Didn't need to take a sheet. Resolution number 2021-14-UR, approving the proposed Broomfield Urban Transit Village filing number 4, replat B, lot 2, urban renewal site plan.
Is there a motion? Councilmember Groom.
I move that resolution number 2021-14-UR be adopted.
Councilmember Tessier.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Hinkle,
Yes.
Kuczynski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes,
Lim,
Yes.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaaf,
Yes.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Castriata,
Yes.
Groom.
Yes.
It passes unanimously, so we'll now move on to, thank you, Joe, and applicant. So good luck with your 8th park. I heard it was the 8th park, so.
That's correct.
Good.
Thank you very
so
much,
much.
Mr. Mayor.
Good.
Good
Council,
night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Our next item under council business this evening is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2021-3, approving an intergovernmental agreement between Broomfield and the Colorado Energy Office for the Energy Performance Contract Program. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which staff will summarize.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Dan Casey, Director of Health and Human Services, will walk us through this item. Dan?
Tammy.
Oh, it's Tammy. Oh, my gosh.
Hi, Jennifer.
My apologies. I'm out of order, out of logistical order. Tammy,
Yes.
please walk us through. Thank you.
Good evening. Andrew Valdez from our department is going to present this item. Andrew, are you?
I am, and thank you. I thought I was off the hook for a second there. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I want to speak briefly on the Energy Performance Contracting, or EPC program, and clarify any remaining questions on how the program works and why this was a priority for the ACES Sustainability Committee. Next slide, please. So the ultimate purpose of the program is to reduce Broomfield's overall municipal energy load, and by extension, our utility bills, right? So by auditing and upgrading systems in Broomfield buildings, the investment grade audit will reveal upgrades and retrofits that will have impact on our energy loads. So at this point, we have looked at Broomfield buildings with Public Works and our facility staff and identified 10 potential candidates that are ripe for this audit. This is based on age and energy use intensity as a function of how big the buildings actually are. So why did we choose EPC? First, because Broomfield has committed to lead by example in the sustainability space. And what better way to showcase leadership than doing high visibility projects in public buildings? Second, the program will make substantial progress towards our adopted greenhouse gas reduction goals as a municipal government. Just to remind everyone, our first goal year, our first benchmark is 2025. We have committed to a 30% reduction from our 2017 baseline. And third, long-term, the program is revenue positive. So the graphic on this slide illustrates this point. On the left, we have Broomfield's full energy load and associated costs. The audit then helps identify projects that will lead to savings. Those savings are then used to finance the debt. Once the finance period is over, we are actually able to keep the savings, right? So I do want to point out that we're under no obligation to use the finance mechanism. We can simply procure the audit and fund the upgrades through our regular capital improvement programs. We can go as fast as slow as we want with this, with the recommended upgrades. Obviously, the higher impact upgrades will be prioritized, and all of this is at council's discretion. And then finally, the cost of the audit can be rolled into the finance package. So the upfront outlay that we're committing to tonight can also be offset. Next slide, please. So this is just a timeline slide. Currently, we're at step 1, where we would make the client commitment through the IGA proposed in front of you with the state. Then we procure a qualified ESCO, or Energy Services Company, through a competitive RFP process. And they help us through the audit identify projects and savings. And then there's the implementation phase. Again, these are all at council's discretion. So ongoing throughout the lifetime of the project is measurement and verification of the savings. This is actually key to the success of the program. Since the ESCO has to guarantee us the savings for at least 3 years, they are bound to ensure the projects accomplish their intended savings. This also helps with reporting and tracking our municipal goals. So staff's recommendation in conclusion is that we proceed with this program and sign the IGA with the state to begin the process. We're also available for any questions, and I believe some members of ACES are also on the line to answer some questions.
Okay, we'll go to public comments next. I lost that screen. If there's anybody that wants to make public comments, please press *3 and state your name, first and last name, and neighborhood for the record. I'm not seeing anybody that's on the queue. So we'll move then to questions from council members. Are there comments or questions from city council? Please raise your hand and you'll be identified. Councilmember Groom.
Hi, thank you. Great presentation. I'll make it super quick. One of the things that I wanted to do is ask a question and make a statement about this. I know the state has, I believe it's called EE3 or E3, EEE, they hired to do a lot of the road mapping. Is that something we should also tap into? Would we be looking at them as our road mapping consultant? Or is this something completely different than what that E3 consulting does for the state?
That's a good question. So this is in relationship to the state roadmap document, right? So we want to develop internally, unless you guys want to give us more money, a greenhouse gas roadmap with specific recommendations, specific policy recommendations with the return on environment and return on investment vetted in that document. And that was something that we had envisioned as developing internally with our new sustainability manager, Camille Paulin. This is this energy performance contracting proposal and resolution is sort of the lowest of the low-hanging fruit. It's the easiest win that we can get. It offsets our greenhouse gas footprint, and it's also revenue positive in the long term. So this is kind of the no-brainer in the full spectrum of the menu of options we do have. The idea going forward with our greenhouse gas roadmap and plan is that we would have a document prioritizing short-term and long-term goals for City and County of Broomfield to pursue. And again, I think this was something that we had intended to do internally. But again, like I said, if you want to fund a consultant, we would not turn down the money.
There's two more. No, I was hoping to get synergy and pay less. But no, that was just a question. Thank you, Mr. Valdez, for the answer. And just a comment, I would have to say back in 2016, I believe we paid for a similar study for housing. And I'm not quite sure if we got we implemented the full value of that housing, the gap study that we did. And I want to make sure that when we pay this $95,000 for this program, that it is for, like you were saying, those multiple years, that strategic plan that will guide us all the way through. Because I believe what happened, and I'm sure Councilmember Tessia can correct me, but things moved so quickly after we got done with that study that I wouldn't say it became obsolete, but we just didn't get the meat for it that we paid. So I want to make sure that this one, we do have that strategic plan coming out of it, that multi-year strategic plan. So that's just a comment and something I'll be watching out for. Thank you, Mr. Valdez, for the question or the answer. And that's all I had, Mayor.
Councilmember Law Evans.
Yes, staff, can you put the graphic of the timeline back up, that lovely diagram?
That was slide 2?
I don't know, maybe.
No, it was. I was telling IT. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair enough. Yes. I don't know. If we can get that back up, okay, here it comes. No, next one, I think it was. Yes, that's the one. The energy performance contracting timeline. Yes, that's the one. And I have to say, I really appreciate this process, the way it's outlined, because there are discrete ETE, not EET, discrete steps, separate steps, and at each step, the public will have, I assume, an opportunity to comment on the implementation or the next step, basically, what comes out of it and how we move along. One of my very large fears with this entire program has always been that we've never gotten an estimate of how much this is ultimately going to cost taxpayers. And I am of the opinion that I'm unwilling to commit a lot of taxpayer money, any taxpayer money, without an idea of how much it is along the way. And I think that this step-by-step framework, this timeline that you all have laid out, is very, very helpful in going through that. So even though I did not receive what I asked for when we originally adopted the goals some time ago, or a year ago, or whatever it was, I never did receive any kind of a financial estimate, a ballpark of, are we talking millions? Are we talking tens of millions? Are we talking hundreds of millions? That answer, or maybe plural, those answers are built into this timeline and this framework that you put together. So I very much appreciate that. And I do want to make sure that as we go through this, that the public will have an opportunity to comment on what could be some very large ticket items, especially once we grab that low hanging fruit. So I guess that's a question. At what steps will decisions be required by City Council that will come and be available for public comment?
Thank you for that. So the audit is sort of the first step, as you can see. So we would do this solicitation for the energy service company. And then the audit is really where we get to the nuts and bolts of what are the recommendations, how much do they cost, and what does the financial package look like? And, you know, again, I'll reiterate, all the projects, I mean, we are not bound by any agreement to do any of the projects, to use a financing mechanism, to do anything beyond the audit at this point. The audit just identifies where the savings could be.
Right.
And then it's council's prerogative, and we can also integrate, I think, a public engagement component here to look at where those targeted investments could be, and then what the liabilities would look like for the taxpayer.
Yes, I would appreciate that. Yes, I vote for public engagement and public comment as we move through this process. So thank you very much for bringing this framework forward. I appreciate it very much. I think that's all I've got, Mr. Mayor.
Aaron, did you want to respond back to a comment or question?
Yeah, I was just hoping to have the opportunity to reply to Councilmember Law Evans real quick, if that's okay.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm glad you're happy with this process. I'm happy with this process, and I know you were not able to attend the meeting when we passed the goals, and I just kind of wanted to let you know that your concerns were not ignored. We chose to pass aspirational goals and bring each individual project before council, so that we have the opportunity to get council feedback before we spend any money. And we pass those goals as aspirational goals. So I just kind of wanted to reassure you that, you know, we are taking those concerns to heart on the committee. And I'm glad that the process that we're bringing before you is sufficient and that you like it. I hope this is a good opportunity to continue to work together.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Lim.
I just wanted to take a second to thank our ACES staff for their research on the EPC program. and also the ACES committee. Having been in most of those meetings where we have discussed the EPC process, the committee and staff have done a significant amount of background research, talking to communities who have implemented this, talking to previous state officials who have worked with this program. So we really have vetted this EPC program quite a bit before it was brought to council. And there was also interfacing with other staff in other departments to make sure that the 10 buildings that were being identified as most likely to be, to benefit from the program were identified clearly. So there was a lot of background work, and I wanted to thank everyone for that.
Thank you. Councilmember Tessier.
Thanks. Ditto on what Councilmember Lim just shared, and just wanted to reiterate that this is also an investment in our community. This is something that we've been talking about for decades, and it's really nice to see this come to fruition. We had the ACES team, the right people at the right place at the right time, and so grateful for their hard work. I also wanted to mention that, there's opportunities for a lot of grants, and that Andrew and Tammy are go-getters, and they're looking for all the grant opportunities that they can get, and also looking at, just how quickly technology changes. And so having it this way, we, the ACES team and staff are very aware of, what we put in place today may not, necessarily work in 5 years, and to have that flexibility with the technology is super important. So kudos and way to go.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Yeah, I share that appreciation for ACES, and this was brought forward over a year ago. So I was not involved in all the steps that Councilmember Lim was referring to, but I very much appreciate those efforts. And I'm also wondering if Aaron or Andrew could speak a little bit to this program as I understood it at the first meeting back in 2019. I think it was like February 2019. It's actually a revenue neutral program, or can be a revenue neutral program, where you, some of the changes are going to, the energy offsets are going to create more revenue or create additional savings more that can be then used for some of the more expensive changes like a boiler or something. Is that, perhaps Andrew could address that?
Yeah, so could we go to slide 2? Perfect. Okay. So so you see the chart on the left. That bar chart represents essentially our total energy load and our total energy cost. The audit helps identify that kind of first box on the top there. So unidentified savings potential. So again, the audit is the first step. Then we agree upon ultimately this program, Councilmember Anderson, it's a finance mechanism. And the debt is serviced through the savings that are identified in the audit. So we determine how long that finance period actually is. Some communities do 10 years. We can make it all the way out to 25 years if we want. And throughout that finance increment, those savings actually go to service the debt. So there's no extra money that Broomfield's spending during that finance increment. At the end, when our finance increment ends, our debt service is totally satisfied. Whatever savings that we have, those just accrue to Broomfield. So we just keep whatever efficiencies and reduced liability that we have for our utility bills. And again, I'll reiterate the upfront costs of paying for the audit can also actually be rolled into the finance vehicle for this entire thing. And I hope that's clear, but what we're going to do as we continue to engage with the State Energy Office on this program, so we'll do constant updates and checks about how this actually impacts Broomfield. But for now, for the short term, the only budgetary impact is the outlay for the audit. Does that answer your question, Councilmember Anderson?
Yes, thank you. And I just want to make, I also want to make sure that everyone, council understands that this isn't going to, the way that this program is laid out, it's not going to cost us all that money. And while we're doing this financing mechanism, as you described it, and making all these energy improvements, we're reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and making improvements that, they're kind of coming for free alongside this program. So I very much support this, and I am so happy that it's moving forward. And thank you for everyone's efforts.
And I think Aaron wants to comment again.
Yeah, I also just kind of want to reiterate something and also extend my thank you to Tammy and Andrew and Camille and Eileen and all of the staff help on this. One of the other things that's really important is that we're only going to lose the $95,000 in the event that they identify $95,000 worth of savings and we choose not to take it. So the initial outlay is the cost of the audit, but the cost of the audit actually gets rolled into the cost. It gets deducted from the costs of the upgrades as long as we choose to go forward with economic upgrades. So I think it's important to recognize that this is revenue neutral, even including the $95,000 that we're asking for today.
Thank you for that clarification. Is there any other questions or comments from council? Otherwise, we'll go to our consideration of proposed resolution number 2021-3. Intergovernmental agreements require affirmative votes of 2/3 of the entire council. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2021-3 by title?
Resolution number 2021-3, authorizing and approving an intergovernmental agreement by and between the City and County of Broomfield and the Colorado Energy Office for the Energy Performance Contract Program.
Is there a motion? Councilmember Lim?
I move that resolution number 2021-3 be adopted.
Councilmember Anderson?
Second.
Any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jaworski?
Yes.
Law Evans?
Yes.
Lim?
Yes.
Lindstedt?
Yes.
Schaaf?
Yes.
Pelletier?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Castriata?
Yes.
Broom?
Yes.
Hinkle?
Yes.
It passes unanimously, so congratulations. Thank you, ACES Group, and Tammy and Andrew. Appreciate the presentation and good luck. We're all looking forward to seeing you come back. We all look forward to seeing you come back and hearing the results. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So our final item under council business this evening is council's consideration of 3 proposed resolutions regarding agreements with 3 nonprofit partners, Imagine, Mental Health Partners, and Broomfield Fish. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I will ask staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Now we are on to Dan Casey, Director of Human Services. Dan?
Thanks, Manager Hoffman. And good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. I'm Dan Casey, Director of Human Services, and I'm here before you today to quickly present to you 3 resolutions for the agreements with Imagine, Mental Health Partners, and Broomfield Fish. As you may know, or you may not know, we'll talk about that tonight. Local nonprofit agencies that wish to receive grant funds from the city and county for public purposes of supporting the health, welfare, and Human Services of Broomfield residents must apply through the Health and Human Services Department. City Council for the 2021 budget approved our grant in the amount of $1.5 million. We had 33 nonprofit agencies submit grant applications requesting a total of just over $2.2 million for this year. That includes Imagine's request of $948,000, and I'll reference that here in a second. It's recommended that Imagine be awarded $541,358.20. Mental Health Partners be awarded $210,000, and Broomfield Fish be awarded $113,400 for 2021. Just so you know, the process, once we received the applications, those were submitted in September. They were received by our department in the middle of October. And then we have a review committee that scores all 32 of those miscellaneous grant applications. The reason that Imagine is called out separately on this particular presentation is that they are not subject to the same application process as our other nonprofits. And that's because Imagine serves as Broomfield's community center board. And they're contracted by the state to provide that service, and they serve individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Developmental disabilities. It's easier to say before 9 p.m., I think. So they're not subject to this application review. Their request and their dollar amount is to be reviewed by council. So that concludes my quick presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
We'll go to public comments. If there's anybody from the public would like to be heard, please press *3 and state your full name and neighborhood for the record. I'm not seeing anybody in the queue.
There is someone, Mayor, being screened right now, Sam Taylor.
Okay. We'll tell him to hurry. I'm kidding. Sam's a friend. Sam's a
Go
friend.
on with that, Sam. We don't need to wait for him. He'll be okay.
Screening.
Sam, please state your full name and your neighborhood for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
I apologize. I was listening to it on the computer. This is Sam Taylor with First Filing. I was listening to 11B, and I want to thank Mr. Casey for the presentation. These three organizations, Imagine, Mental Health Partners, and FISH, have impacted our family in many ways. Everybody in my immediate family has either been an employee, a volunteer, or even a client of one of these organizations. They're all fantastic organizations, and I really appreciate you supporting them tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. I'm not noting anybody else, not noting anybody else in the queue, so I will go to council comments or questions. Are there any questions or comments from council? I'll go with Councilmember Tessier and then Councilmember Groom. Councilmember Tessier?
Do I need to recuse myself at all?
You do. It just crossed my mind when I saw that FISH is one of them. So whatever the resolution is for FISH, let's go ahead and do it. Which one is the resolution for FISH? So we can have, because I presume you can vote on the other two.
Mayor, that's resolution 20-21-10.
10. So when it comes to 2021-10, Sharon, we'll ask you to recuse yourself.
Mayor, that's the third one, so we can go through the first two.
No, I get it. I'm on the same page with you. So we'll have her vote on 8, 9, and then we'll ask her to recuse herself on 10. So Councilmember Groom.
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Casey, for a great presentation. I really wanted to focus in on the deficit for Imagine. So with that kind of money, all of them are taking a cut in the funding request, but with that kind of budget fund request, what kind of services will be reduced? And why was it, and I know you said it was a COVID related thing, but $500,000. I'm really concerned about that.
Yeah, so and thank you for the question, Councilmember Groom. The request for funds that we received from Imagine included a lot of things that were COVID related, things like individual counseling sessions and Zoom counseling sessions and kind of telehealth work and setting up, PPE for their staff. And there were a number of different things in there that weren't necessarily all service related. Also, we had to make some tough decisions. We had 32 applications that were also requesting funds. And right now, Imagine actually our budget for last year and our budget for this year increased by about $70,000. And we about 56 of that $73,000 to Imagine this year. And that represented about an 11.5% increase for them. It really came down to how much money we had in the pot for all of the services that we had applications for. And also their request for funds from the year prior doubled. There was no way that we could increase their funds by twice the amount that they had asked for that previous year. And I would have to go back to their actual document that breaks down exactly what they're requesting, but I think every service line that they had increased, we asked them to kind of resubmit some of their numbers. There were a couple of discrepancies in some of the numbers about number of clients that they would be serving, but when those came back, it wasn't too far below their original request. And so, that's the amount of money that we give Imagine in this grant application is pretty small in comparison to what they receive from other communities and also from their ability to draw down on Medicaid and those type of things. So I don't have really a better answer for you than we really had to figure out and make some critical decisions on how we were going to divide the 1.5 million between 32 agencies.
Sure. And then another question with Imagine, since they serve a lot of different communities, is it prorated by a percentage of clients, or is it just kind of how do they know how much to ask for each community year after year?
Yeah.
And has our percentage grown?
Our percentage has increased slightly. It hasn't grown tremendously with them. It's based on the number of clients that they serve from those communities. So obviously Boulder County is a lot larger than we are. So a lot more folks from Boulder County are being served by them. I would say that it really comes down to that kind of per capita, right? How many clients they have for each community, and then the different services that they offer. So again,
perfect, thank you. And then, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just need to hurry. I know my minutes are counting down. Moving to the mental health partners, do they serve 100% of their services are here in Broomfield, right? It's not like Imagine.
No, they actually serve multiple counties, but our dollars only go towards Broomfield residents.
Okay, but they're located here in Broomfield.
They do have a location in Broomfield, yes, and they have a.
Oh, okay. They're located in all, not just Broomfield. Okay, because I know their location, but I just didn't know. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And same question for them. Have they indicated any kind of service reduction based on the funding reduction for the Broomfield facility?
No. So actually, Mental Health Partners received an increase over what they received last year by about 10.
But a decrease to their request.
A decrease to their request, yes, and an increase to what they asked for last year. But again, we gave them an increase over their 2020 funding, but we could not match the total amount of requests that they had for 21.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's all I had. I appreciate your presentation, Mr. Casey.
Sure. Councilmember Tessier?
I just wanted to thank Mandy Walkie and her incredible amount of time that she spent, reviewing and along with HSAC as well. Dan, you have a phenomenal team, and just wanted to say thank you to everyone who participated. And I didn't get a chance to say that before, so I just want to make sure I said that today. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we will proceed with resolution number 2021-8. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2021-8 by title?
Resolution number 2021-8, authorizing and approving an agreement by and between the City and County of Broomfield and Imagine for developmental disability services.
Councilmember Groom.
I move that resolution number 2021-8 be adopted.
Councilor or Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaaf,
Yes.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Castriata,
Yes.
Groom,
Yes.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Duzersky.
Yes.
It passes unanimously. So let's go to council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2021-9. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution 2020-9 by title?
Resolution number 2021-9, authorizing and approving an agreement by and between the City and County of Broomfield and Mental Health Partners for Mental Health Services.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that resolution number 2021-9 be adopted.
Councilmember Groom.
Second.
Any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Lim,
Yes.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaaf,
Yes.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Castriata,
Yes.
Groom,
Yes.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Duzersky,
Yes.
Law Evans.
Yes.
It passes unanimously, and I think I did need to ask. I think, and you know, for the record, for everybody, Councilmember Tessier, you know, is an employee of Fish, and therefore she has recused herself, and so she is not on this call at this point in time. I'll let her know when it's time for her to come back. So let's go ahead and have council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2021-10. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2021-10 by title?
Resolution number 2021-10, authorizing and approving an agreement by and between the City and County of Broomfield and Broomfield Fish for basic needs and self-sufficiency services.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that resolution number 2021-10 be adopted.
Councilmember Hinkle.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaaf,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Castriata,
Yes.
Groom,
Yes.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Duzersky,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lim.
Yes.
And it passes unanimously, and I will go ahead and invite Sharon back. And I appreciate Sharon for identifying that it hit me when the name Fish came up. So I appreciate everybody doing stuff right. So we'll move on to the attorney's report. I'm going to give Sharon, let's give her a few seconds. So Jake, keep an eye on Sharon so she can get back in the second she logs on. And,
We're watching for it.
Okay. And so I'll go ahead and I'll introduce, and I already welcomed Ms. Rogers to Broomfield's new city county attorney. And so her very first city and county attorney report is next. Ms. Rogers, do you have a report? Once again, is Sharon gotten back on?
Not yet.
I'm going to just pause for a few seconds since
She's coming right now.
okay, she's on now. Okay, so Ms. Rogers, your very first city and county attorney's report.
Thank you. It's good to see everyone this evening. It's good to be on the meeting, and it's great to be part of this city and county of Broomfield. My only report is to say everybody has been very welcoming, staff and council alike. I know I still have a couple more one-on-ones with council to do, but I look forward to those. And again, thank you. Thank you for the welcome.
Okay, well, we hope all your reports are that brief. Just trying to be funny, just trying to be funny. The city and county manager's report is next. Ms. Hoffman, do you have a report?
Mayor, I do, but I'm going to advocate it to David Allen. We have a technical statement that we need to read regarding the FRICO ditch update. David, you want to walk us through this real quick?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. David Allen, Director of Public Works. I just wanted to give you an update real quickly, and as a follow-up to the email I sent to City Council right at the end of the year that we had filed a water rights change application to the Water Court. This effort is in line with promoting Council's priority related to water. And specifically, or just briefly, what we did is we filed a change of use application for the 150 FRICO Marshall shares that we own. And we've acquired those shares over the course of about 25 years. And most would be familiar with the water that's associated with a community ditch. And historically, we have used that water to maintain pond levels throughout the community. And recent changes in state law have precluded us from being able to continue to do that. So that prompted us to go ahead and file for a change of use because these water shares were historically used for primarily for irrigation purposes. As I indicated in that email, I listed all of the uses. Some of those include commercial, industrial, residential, domestic, as well as the pond level maintenance that we've historically been using. But since we were going through the process, we just wanted to make sure that we included all of those types of uses in the change of use application. The proceedings themselves will probably take about upwards of several years to complete. I think on the outside timeframe, probably upwards of 2 years. And because of the nature of that process, a lot of it will just depend on the number of opposers that we get. So I just wanted to formally update council on that action, and we will continue to keep council apprised of any significant developments as we move through this process. Thank you.
Mayor, and then just the last piece for council's information, which leads to number 14, which is the legislative update, which we don't have one tonight, but they are coming back into session. The lobbying groups are rallying the troops. There has been movement already on many fronts. So Danae will continue to be the point of contact as we move through for lobbying. We have posted the city county clerk position. Danae has thoughtfully agreed to continue in the acting capacity until that position has been filled. So she continues to work with the staff, and we feel confident that by shoring up some other support services, she will continue to be council's point person for legislation, continuing to be out of the CMO, and we look forward to hiring that position so we can get her back up in the CMO. With that, Mayor, that concludes the manager's report, and look forward to additional legislative updates moving forward.
Okay, and I'll just give a chance for council members if they have any questions or comments. Now would be the time to raise your hand and ask. I don't see any, so as Jennifer just mentioned, or Ms. Hoffman, there are no legislative update right now. So we'll close out the Urban Renewal Authority. The Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority was previously convened in items 15A and 15B, where we're reviewed currently with items 7I and 11B under the consent agenda council business. There being no further business before the Urban Renewal Authority, the meeting is adjourned. There is no business before the Arista Local Improvement District Board of Directors or special reports this evening. And we actually have two requests from city council members under sections 18. The first request is for council's consideration relating to Western Leaders Network 30x30 pledge. Councilmember Anderson, would you like to begin tonight's discussion?
Yes, thank you. This is my first Section 18 request, so hopefully I do this right. I would like to request that council consider a resolution supporting the 30x30 campaign to protect 30% of lands and oceans by 2030. I'll just take about 2 or 3 minutes to go through a few notes I have here. The 30x30 campaign is a worldwide science-based initiative to conserve at least 30% of Earth's lands and oceans by the year 2030, and was launched to address our climate crisis and reverse the destruction of our wildlife, waters, and natural places. In our region, Western Leaders Network is sponsoring the 30x30 pledge, which asks local and tribal governments to pledge to preserve 30% of our lands and waters by 2030. This pledge is in line with and supports the efforts by Congress to champion this goal, such as the 30x30 resolution led by Senators Udall and Bennett, and several representatives, including our own Representative Joe Neguse. This pledge seemed quite fitting because Broomfield, as we all know, has already established a goal of maintaining 40% open space. And we are already, Christian Prince shared some numbers with me that we're currently at 34.9%. And on our way to that 40%. So we're above the 30% there. And we received also an update from David Allen that regarding the water, that one of the main components of Broomfield's 2020 water efficiency plan includes the continued use and expansion of the non-public irrigation water system, along with he gave some other areas where Broomfield is striving for water conservation. And that is in places where we don't have large amounts of water, it's just that support and that commitment to what we can do is all that is really required. And the Councilmember Lim did reach out to the ACES committee, and I think it may have been Tammy. They did not make a formal recommendation, but the members were generally supportive. And if there is council agreement on the campaign, we could model this approach similar to Boulder County, who adopted a proclamation in support of the congressional resolutions just a couple months ago. And I'm happy to try to answer questions, but that is, I guess, the overview. Thank you.
No, good job. Thank you, Councilmember Anderson. We'll proceed with public comments. If there's anyone who'd like to be heard, please press *3, state your first and last name and neighborhood for the record. I'm not seeing anybody in the queue. Mayor Pro Tem. So we will go to council comments or next. Anybody from council would like to address this issue or raise your hand, or we can just kind of indicate that we're all in agreement to move forward. Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm in agreement to move forward, and thank you, Councilmember Anderson, for bringing this forward. Thanks.
I see most people nodding their heads, so I don't think we need to have. In fact, I see everybody nodding their head, except maybe Councilmember Law Evans, but she I'm trying to be funny tonight. So it looks to me like the consensus is to move forward, Jennifer and Councilmember Anderson, and this certainly got vetted. So Councilmember Schaaf, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify the next step. So the suggestion by Councilmember Anderson was to put forth a proclamation to officially have council weigh in on this this goal of the 30 by 30. Is that the intent? Is that Councilmember Anderson will work with staff to put forward a proclamation for council to see in the coming weeks to months?
Councilmember Anderson, I believe that's a yes, right?
Oh, if that was a question for me, yes, I can work with staff too on that proclamation. So,
okay,
thank you.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think that we can close that out. I mean, I think you have your direction, and thank you for bringing it up. And it seemed to be well received by both Kristen and I think David Allen. So thank you, Councilmember Anderson. So we will move to the second request, which is from Councilmember Lim. Would you like to begin tonight's discussion on your 18A item?
I'm requesting that council begin to consider an ordinance to extend reverse setbacks. Reverse setbacks regulate the distance with which a residential developer may construct a new home near an existing oil and gas facility. We have had recent development projects where reverse setbacks have been pertinent to the discussion, and we will continue to encounter these development situations in the coming months. It will be more efficient, I would think, to have the reverse setback regulations in place and not continue to handle them on an ad hoc basis. I suggest that staff draft an ordinance that would include a scientific basis for reverse setbacks, similar to what was already set forth in ordinance number 2123, revising the Broomfield Municipal Code regarding zoning for oil and gas development. Background currently regarding reverse setbacks, Broomfield regulations state in Title 16 that no residential lots in any subdivision shall be platted any closer than 200 feet from an oil and gas facility. And no public or private school building in any subdivision shall be located any closer than 500 feet. So as we probably recall, in May of 20, when we passed ordinance number 2123, in the use by special review, we said that no oil and gas location containing an oil and gas well shall be located any closer than 2,000 feet from the nearest parcel lot line under certain uses. So I'm asking for staff to draft the ordinance with hopefully this scientific basis. In our original ordinance for the setbacks, we cited the CDPHE study. We cited our own health impacts. And then I would also propose that we might want to, discuss the reverse setback regulations in a tiered approach. So we might have tiers for a large scale site under development and production, a different tier for a single producing well, and a different tier for plug and abandoned wells with reverse setbacks. So that's some basic ideas that I wanted to put forward. And if there's any questions, please let me know.
We'll now proceed with public comments. If there's anyone from the public that would like to speak on this issue, please state your full name and your neighborhood, and you would have 3 minutes to make your comments. I don't see anybody in the queue, so I'll go to council member comments next. Council members, Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. As someone living in Anthem Highlands and in Ward 4, as part of my constituents with the Davisbury 3-6 well, we've definitely seen that need for reverse setbacks, and also with the, I know in the beginning it was a concern about, wells are under development, but when you see these large scale facilities, you realize that we're realizing that those emissions continue. We can continue to see spikes of BTEX and other chemicals, and that becomes a very serious concern that we must consider when thinking we're going to build next to them. So I definitely support Councilmember Lim's request for ordinance regarding reverse setbacks. Thank you.
Councilmember Lyons.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity. It seems to me that we have discussed this before, and sort of where we landed several years ago, if I recall correctly, was on that there's a fundamental difference between owning a home, living in a home, and having oil and gas development come to you versus having an oil and gas facility, plugged in abandoned well, operative well, what have you, and having a home built nearby where the home buyer has the opportunity to understand the proximity of the facility, do their own investigation and education with regard to risks, and make their own, hopefully, educated decision. And I've actually shown homes as a real estate broker, not many, because I don't do much residential, where it was part of the disclosure documents that, hey, this is within a certain distance of whatever facility. And that became the basis for starting a conversation. So I think that I'm willing to discuss this more. I'm not willing to go straight from a Section 18 request to an ordinance, but I am willing to have conversations on this issue and see if there are better ways to work on this. Because frankly, the other thing is, if we were to make identical setbacks where the setback was 2,000 feet for new construction, new residential construction from an existing facility or a plugged in abandoned well or whatever, I would think, among other things, that up in the northern part of Broomfield in the baseline development, I would think that those people would be just completely shut down. And then in terms of what their current plans are, and then we get into a sticky situation. Again, this is all conjecture on my part, having done this now for 7 years. I would think that we get into a situation of a discussion as to whether or not this becomes a taking with some of the entitlements at baseline, and I'm just using baseline as an example, some of the entitlements in place, some of them not, and here we come and we change it at this point. So I think this could I appreciate the intent, which is to protect health and safety. Absolutely appreciate the intent, but I think this has the potential to blow up and be a much stickier situation than anything relatively straightforward as to what's been discussed. So I'm absolutely willing to discuss it more, but I'm very much unwilling to go straight to ordinance from here. So I'd like to, honestly, what I'd like to do is have discussions with all the stakeholders in Broomfield, as well as the health and safety people, gather the scientific rationale for a specific setback, and see if we can, or reverse setback, see what sort of a discussion falls out to where people feel heard, people feel valued in their current entitlements, their current situation, and yet we do our due diligence and complete our responsibility to protecting human health and safety. I'd like to see this be an extended process, I guess is what I'm saying. So I hope that makes sense. I do appreciate Councilmember Lim bringing this forward. It is a discussion that's certainly timely. So those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Groom.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I do agree. I'm okay moving this forward into a discussion. I have a lot of concerns associated around the impacts and intents. I do recall that even since we had the concept of reverse setbacks, we've approved developments that have been next to an oil and gas facility and active and expected to be abandoned. So I do think that there is, we need to really understand, and what I would like to know in the discussion is where we are technically with abandoning and plugging. And I know that we've had the one issue in Broomfield, it was old plugging and abandoning technology, but what can we do to enhance that so we can still develop our lands. And then also one thing I would be looking at from a legal standpoint is there's a lot of people that's put a lot of money in developing Broomfield, and what would be those implications for us if we now deem their land undevelopable? Anyway, and I would also suggest this be more of an executive session discussion, and then move out into a study session if we could.
Yeah, and I'll make a comment on that if Mayor Pro Tem doesn't, because there has been some discussion on it. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll let you talk about that, but I just wanted to say it kind of goes in the category of when, we know better, we do better. And the 200-foot setback that is currently on the books, the hard setback, was not based on any science or health and safety data. And with regards to developers not being able to develop, well, the methane leak in the Anthem area is preventing a developer from moving forward because of its proximity to this old plugged and abandoned well that keeps leaking. There's the Carlson well that's next to the school where you live, Mayor. I mean, these things inevitably leak with time. And every time they go to do a P&A, it seems like there's remediation needed. So those volatile organic.
We made it. So I'll make a comment.
Not to belabor the point, I support moving forward with this in a study session or other venues, executive session, but I definitely support revisiting this topic.
Yeah, let me make a couple of comments and specific on the executive session, but what both Councilmember Law Evans Groom said. I'll just say from my perspective, I've been attending the Wednesday afternoon meetings, which I found productive. And the Davis 43-6, which has methane lakes, is in the middle of a development, and we've been holding up permits. There was a discussion about reverse setbacks at one of those meetings, and I guess I was really pleased to see that Gene put this forward because there's an issue there that needs to be addressed by council, and I think it was taken seriously enough by the city staff when Gene raised it, that they're looking into it and they want to add this to the 26th executive session. We're set right now to have a 5 o'clock executive session on oil and gas matters. My understanding is that this can be added to that session because it is about oil and gas regulations. And so in answer, so we will have an executive session. And I think out of that executive session, we'll probably have a study session come out of that as well. That's public. And so my comment is, I think it's absolutely necessary to move forward for all the reasons everybody said tonight, and the legal implications are very significant. And so we'll address that on the 26th. And once again, I'm seeing everybody. So once again, staff, and I think Nancy had chimed in as well, that they're prepared to address this issue in our study session on the 26th. I pointed out today when we were talking about it, or maybe it was last Wednesday, we do have the Dillon Point on the 26th, so we can't go much past 6 o'clock. So we'll need to keep it fairly concise because I think we're all anticipating. I think council will set aside, or excuse me, Danae and others have set aside a few hours for the Dillon Point. So anyway, Councilmember Lim, thanks for bringing it forward, and it's a discussion we just have to have. And so I am going to move towards, I'm not aware of any other business. Is there any other business to come before council? And thank you, council, once again, a really good meeting. Very thoughtful, and thank you. And the meeting is adjourned.